Welcome to another edition of the Dogger Pass podcast. This is for UFC 305 from Perth, Western Australia. Producer Jared is on the sticks. Cody Saftic is on the line. 14 fights are on the docket, and pretty solid pay-per-view event. You know, a little bit of Aussie regional level type of stuff mixed into the back end, but the Aussies always bring in. We were talking about when we just got onto it, or when we, got on the line, we're chit-chatting and stuff. It's like this card starts at like 6:30 in the morning Aussie time, and
Oh, yeah, 6.
it is going to be absolutely raucous in there. Liquor licenses don't seem to turn off, and like by the time they get to the main event, like it'll be. Aussie crowds are some of the best crowds, I would say, in the modern UFC landscape.
Yeah, no, I agree. Listen, it's a passionate fan base, and it would be the same thing if they came to Canada more often. If they were like, get up at this time, then people would do it just because UFC doesn't come there that often. In Vegas, no one's going to care because there's a UFC event every single weekend. But in these markets that are begging for fights, they're gonna do whatever needs to be said. So I like it. It's another great 12-fight offering. It's got a pay-per-view vibe to it. We've been going through this grind of just mediocre MMA recently, where it's just like bottom level fight night cards, or I got smoked on Contender Series last night. Just you look at bad level fights and it's bad level results. But this is a fun pay-per-view, man. I mean, regardless of if you say it's got the biggest name brand guys, is that there's a lot of potent finishers and a lot of violent entertainment. And the UFC's in this rut where all these cards, not only are they middling and the fighters are unknown guys, and the fights themselves are just not good. We discussed last week about how there's been a lack of knockouts recently, and it was the same thing with the last card. So mismatches, you're going to get a finish in those instances. But even then, you're not getting these highlight reel KOs. You're getting someone gets dropped, someone gets submitted, mostly a lot of people getting grinded. The UFC's gone so far. I'm not going to say fix a fight, but the UFC's gone so far as to tell a couple guys on the roster don't wrestle anymore. And that becomes extremely problematic for guys like you and me that are betting on this stuff. So you look back a couple weeks with the Makayev fight and the kind of lost story in that whole shuffle, because everyone's just talking about how he's a jerk and how he got cut and he's a top flyweight and he shouldn't have got cut. And, well, he's a jerk, so he should have got cut. And this promotion wants him and that promotion wants him. What got lost in the shuffle is that he goes on record to say that the UFC matchmakers approached him and told him, hey, man, we don't like your style. You're wrestling too much. Try standing up. So even though he ends up winning against Manel Kopp, it ends up being a terrible fight. He shoots all of like 1 or 2 takedowns, really commits to nothing. Pants is the guy, I get it, but got him down. So why not try it again and not pants him? He abandons it. So last week I'm thankful enough that we got the top ticket, but the second ticket, in my opinion, it should have hit, because Carl Williams, a guy that goes out there and averages 10, 15 takedown attempts per fight, goes out and shoots. I mean, technically he shot 5, but again, doesn't commit to them. Waits until he's down the first 2 rounds. Then it's like there's 2.5 minutes left in the third. And at that point, he finally did something that he could have done, or should have done certainly, way earlier, which is just get the fight, get into a dominant position, land some ground and pound. Then the round ends and he loses. And so the rumor floating around there is that they approached him, and he's coming off 4 straight decision wins with a lot of takedowns, and his style's boring as hell. So his contract's probably due to come up, and they've made him aware of that. Nate Maness, he was a 5-2 flyweight, 3 performance bonuses. They released him from his contract. They didn't release him. His contract expired, and they just opted not to re-sign him. And then their reasoning being he's not exciting. But so what do you want these guys to do, right? In Maness's case, he had 3 bonuses. He was doing everything right. 5-2 with the organization. Never said no to a tough fight. 1 at 45, 1 at 35, 1 at 125. 1 at 3 different weight classes. Released. So when we break down fights, oftentimes it's like this guy's got a huge grappling advantage. But if he does not utilize it, because management's telling him don't, then it's off balancing everything. And realistically, Dricus should, they're not going to tell nothing to that fight because it's a championship fight, but Dricus should wrestle. If he doesn't, it would be a mistake. A guy like Mateusz Gamrot, his whole game's wrestling. If he just goes out there and decides to box a little bit, it's going to be extremely problematic. A guy like Valter versus Junior Tafa, don't stand with this guy. Just take him down like the good old days on the regional scene. But if they tell him not to, it's going to be disastrous. So just adds a whole other greasy element to what already was a greasy last few years in this betting market for MMA in particular. So I don't know, we'll do our best to get through it, but kind of disappointing to say the least.
Who is allegedly, like, because this just sounds like baseless rumors? Like, who is actually telling these people to not
Well,
wrestle?
Makayev. Okay, so
I heard
this is
about
the only thing I'll say to
Makayev,
that.
and
Yeah.
like, frankly, listening to them, what did it do? Nothing, because he still lost his damn job anyway. So maybe
But it was a
don't listen
bad
to them.
fight,
Just go out and
and he
win.
sucker punched. Okay. Here's the only thing I'll just sprinkle to that, and then we can break down a fresh set of fights here. The only thing I'll say to that is that Makayev says the UFC matchmakers, meaning either Sean Shelby or McMahon. Which one? Don't know, don't care. The UFC matchmakers, one of those two gentlemen. Then a journalist at one of the press conferences brings it up to Dana White. The Makayev said that the UFC matchmakers told him not to wrestle, and he kind of brushes it off, kind of like, poof, yeah. I'm sure one of them did tell him that, but blah, 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 blah. It's kind of like a workaround answer where he's not like, no, at no point would a UFC executive ever tell a fighter. Because remember what happened with Kimbo versus Seth Petrozelli? Seth Petrozelli ends up filling in last second for Ken Shamrock, right? So Jared Shaw, right? He ends up approaching Team Petrozelli and offers him a $5,000 bonus on top of his show money if he does not take Kimbo down. So it doesn't matter because Seth Petrozelli goes out there and knocks him out in like 10 seconds. But all the same, when Seth Petrozelli mentioned that at the post-fight press conference or in an interview that he had been paid an extra $5,000 to not take Kimbo down, that in itself is in some type of gray area of fixing the fight.
Yeah.
You altered the fight behind the scenes by telling someone not to do that. So he had to recant his statement. The Shaws end up getting investigated, and Elite XC end up folding up. That was their last show anyways. So it's an area you don't want to go to. So Dana didn't just squash it and say, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. In no way, shape, or form would the matchmakers ever do that. He just kind of gave a run around answer like, yeah, I'm sure they told him, hey, be more exciting if you want a contract extension, right? So it's how you say it. If you tell a guy, hey man, I know you've won your last 3 fights, but fans don't like your style and management doesn't like your style, and if your next fight's not that entertaining, I think we're just going to release you anyways. Guys are getting released coming off wins, so now it puts the pressure on them. And I'm not going to like sour grapes or anything, but like Contender Series, it has a notoriety for that. Again, I got smoked last night, but here's one of the fights I got smoked in. That Loner Kavanaugh, this kid is sick. The kid he's fighting, An Ho, is sick. An Ho's a wicked good wrestler and a wicked good grappler. He shines in these transitions and these scrambles on the ground. Striking's badass, but he's a great grappler. Loner's just a sweet striker. Why would you just stand with Loner? But he comes in, he's flashing his jab, he lands a couple right hands, he bloodies Loner's nose up, he shoots no takedowns. You look at this guy's regional scene, it's all box to set up a takedown, but Dana's sitting there and there's a contract riding on the line, so they don't do what they're supposed to. You can't fault those guys because they're fighting for a contract that's on the line. It's the guys that are already in the UFC. They've signed you. Your style is your style. How you choose to win is how you choose to win. The contract comes up, offer them less money because they don't have an exciting style, but and I'm not accusing them of anything, if there was discussions that it's like you shouldn't fight like this or you shouldn't do like that, man, like again, and I'm a matchmaker, like I know the business side of things. I've worked with the fighters. Like it's just that's not a conversation I've ever had. I got boring guys. I booked them in fights I don't care about because it's like I know it's going to be a boring fight, but I'm not telling the guy you're holding them back, or I could give you this if you do this for me. Like there's no type of those discussions happening. So to hear Makayev say it, and then to hear the Williams rumors, and then to scratch my head at a couple of these fights that it's like, why aren't they taking the path of least resistance? Yeah, it's not WWE shit, don't get me wrong, but it's like, at what point are you drawing the line that it's like it's starting to shift towards
more sports entertainment than being a sport?
Yeah, we just want guys from Contender Series that are going to make 10,000 and 10,000. They're going to stand. They're going to strike. Someone's going to get knocked out. And Dana loves slap fight. And that's all slap fight is. We're going to take guys that are going to make $3,000, right? They're going to come in. They're low-level guys, but it doesn't matter because one of them is going to get spectacularly slapped in the face and KO'd. We'll take that KO.
Put it on Instagram.
All over our social medias. We're creating content. We got TV partners that want to come on board. We got sponsors that now want to come on board. And our overhead is non-existent, right? And so people start giving them shit about having these events at the UFC Apex, but no one's giving Power Slap a hard time for running in the Apex because to them, that's a big setting. It's a good venue, right? It's not a bunch of bales of hay in somebody's shed in the UK. So like they like that just people get absolutely starched KO'd and there's no rhyme or reason. And so again, I wouldn't doubt that that's the model that makes the most sense financially. It's just not the greatest model if you're trying to be the premier sports league with the premier fighters. And It's like Mark Coleman said, if you can't wrestle, you can't fight. And he's so right. He said this like 25 years ago, and it still holds true today. If you can't wrestle, then why are you taking an MMA fight? But instead, they don't want these D1 level All-Americans. They don't want these guys that are going to take you to the ground and just, absolute control you. They will here and there, but there's a reason that there's only 60 Russians on the roster and not 160 Russians on the roster, because that's what they would do and they would be very successful. So I understand that you need a certain amount of fighters from every demographic, right? And as such, grapplers are just going to beat most of them. So let's avoid grapplers. And the grapplers we do have, let's tell them to grapple less. Like, I don't know. Again, where do you draw the line? But who cares? I'm a degenerate gambler. There's 12 good fights in front of us. So let's just try to mitigate what we do know to the best of our abilities and be profitable to the best of our abilities, hit some winners.
Well, maybe if you want knockouts, what you should do is not change the gloves to leather-wrapped pillows and like put like rocks in there instead.
Just take out the padding.
Because like the new gloves, have
boxing with some leather
killed
on top,
like flash knockouts. It seems right now. You haven't seen many of them.
I've seen flash knockouts where like the guy gets hit and hits the deck and then pops back up and he's good to go. But I haven't seen a whole lot of like, yeah, the guy's absolutely starched clean. And again, there's going to be an exception to the rule. Oh, this guy got smoked. Oh, that guy got kicked in the head or kneed in the head. That's still going to be spectacular. But yeah, it does seem like the punches just don't exactly have the most zip on them. And again, because they're using fairly evenly matched lower level fighters, I don't know. It seems to be materializing to a lot of overs. That was another thing about last week, is that still hold true. It's 3 events in a row for the UFC. These overs have been money. So this one, I think that there's going to be a lot more violence. It's booked as such, and there's going to be a red hot Australian fan that's just breathing fire for KOs and submissions. So I don't know that theory will stand true for this event. But yeah, I would go back to it beyond this one.
All right, main event. We've got Israel Adesanya taking on Dricus du Plessis. It's a straight pick 'em on the numbers right now. Earlier in the day, Adesanya was like a minus 130 to like plus 110 on Dricus. But as I see it right now, action is coming in on du Plessis, and I think it kind of makes sense. It's like anytime Adesanya fights anyone, the ability to get takedowns on him is still there. I don't think it's ever really going anywhere. Where you have Dricus, who had a tit for tat fight with Sean Strickland last time out. Some of Strickland's fan base thought he was absolutely robbed up in communist Canada and all of that type of stuff. But really, at the end of the day, it was a super, super razor close fight. And the 6 takedowns that Dricus got on Sean Strickland probably were the differentiator in that. Strickland got a little bit more volume, but Strickland's volume doesn't really come with pop. And Dricus was able to mix in some takedowns and maybe steal some rounds that way. Adesanya, there's a long list of people who were able to take him down. And on top of that, he's coming off of a fight where everyone was saying Strickland should probably go out there and try to wrestle Adesanya, and he didn't. He just put him on his back foot and put volume on him for 5 rounds and took the belt. So I think Dricus is the side here, unless these people are going into his ears saying, don't shoot takedowns. I feel like Dricus is self-confident enough, smart enough. If this is just a stand-up striking match, then all bets are off and Adesanya should be a massive favorite. But Dricus has shown time and time again that's like, even when he looks like he's kind of getting tired, it's like the guy's just got that dog in him. I'm going to back him. What about you?
Yeah, I'm in the same position. I think that on one hand, it's like, oh, Israel Adesanya, he's at home and he's got the crowd. But we just saw this in the fight with Sean Strickland. So it seemed like pressure had really got to him. He was very vocal before that card started that there was 7 city kickboxing fighters on the show and that they were going to have this huge night and this is your moment and don't leave no regrets on the table. And then he fought Sean Strickland and just stared at him for the most part. Yeah, he landed a few strikes here and there, but he got dog walked. There was no respect shown towards his striking, no respect shown towards his power. People will say that he overlooked Sean Strickland, but there was no ability to just like switch gears and have any sense of urgency. You saw that in the Jan Blachowicz fight once upon a time as well, where he's getting taken down, he's getting controlled, and he just kind of looks lost in there. There's no like deep grit. I got to take it to the next level. You have seen that from him one time before when he fought Kelvin Gastelum, another guy that didn't show him that same level of respect, largely dog walked him, rocked him bad with a head kick of all things. Welterweight 5'9" Kelvin Gastelum head kicks Izzy, and that fight's 2-2 going into the 5th round. Izzy shines in the 5th round. But then again, there's been other instances since that where he just doesn't have any sense of urgency. As much as the guy is a legendary fighter, he's not Anderson Silva to me because again, there's a lot of inconsistency in these performances. This is a guy that had won a split decision over Marvin Vettori, taken down twice and only landed 57 significant strikes. But okay, he won, and it's a long time ago. Fair. Went the decision with Brad Tavares. Okay, fair. Again, it's a long time ago. His fight with Anderson Silva, he fought a near 44-year-old man, went full 15 minutes, and he had outstruck him 65-31. No sense of urgency. His fight with Kelvin Gastelum, 2-2 going into the 5th round with a ballooned up welterweight. God damn. His fight with Yoel Romero. People might not remember that one because it's quite literally one of the most boring fights you've ever seen in your entire life. It's Rose Namajunas, Carlos Esparza level of absolutely nothing happens. And I remember live, people actually had scored at Yoel Romero 3-2. So it's a terrible fight. His fight with Paulo Costa, it's a good fight for Izzy. Nice KO. It's still to this day looked at as Paulo Costa's by far worst performance. He did nothing. He did nothing. He stared at him and had no idea what to do. So as much as the guy is a very talented striker and he's got all these great qualities about him, it seems like it's beautiful performance where he KOs Robert Whittaker, bit of a layoff performance, great performance, layoff performance. His striking volume, it's not super high. It's 3.93 strikes landed per minute, right? You look at Dricus, 6.49, and I get it. One guy's this very tight and technical and very precise kickboxer, but if you're getting outworked by a guy moving forward, it's problematic. You saw it almost work for Kelvin Gastelum, but you did see it work for Sean Strickland. And again, a guy like Jan Blachowicz that showed him no respect and is coming forward and gets a hold of you and throws you to the ground. Those are the guys that are able to break through. They're not lost at range, staring at you, waiting to get hit, worried. They're going to go forward. And to me, that's what Dricus does bring to the table. He's 5 years younger than Israel Adesanya. He's not even in the prime of his physical capabilities right now. So when you look at past performances where it's like, man, he looks so gassed in that fight. Oh, man, his body language is way off. As you mentioned, he finds a way to persevere. Most of these fights, he finds a way to finish. In a 5-round fight with Sean Strickland, he had a bad 5th round, but still had fought a full 5 rounds. There's a lot to like about him. Other thing being, he starts his career as a striker. The guy's a striker. He moves forward. He's a pressure guy. He's got good durability. But to me, it's that he's very physically strong. And I don't know. I just don't think he's got the wrestling behind him or around him to utilize that strength. But he's a very physically strong man. That changes when he takes on Derek Brunson, who he takes down, which is pretty impressive. Beyond that, he takes down Robert Whittaker and smashes Robert. Robert, known for cast iron takedown defense. A guy that allegedly had qualified for the Commonwealth team for Australia back in the day, a solid veteran and a solid takedown defense guy. So then he takes him down and he smashes him. It's impressive. The Sean Strickland's defense, takedown defense is cast iron. Him, Sam Alvey, Chris Curtis, all those guys that came out of Dan Henderson's gym in Temecula, California, what would be Team Quest, had they not got sued for naming rights. Those guys are very difficult to take down. And again, you see him take him down 6 times. So let's look at what Dricus has going for him in this fight. Okay, one, he almost averages nearly twice as many significant strikes landed per fight. So he's got volume. He's got pace. If Izzy doesn't just land this knockout blow like he did against Pereira, there is a good chance that, in fact, Dricus is the one coming forward landing shots similar to what Sean Strickland did. When you look at Izzy's takedown defense, again, it's never been great. But now he's 35 years old, coming off a year-long layoff. I don't expect it to be any better, at least not marginally better. Meanwhile, Dricus has taken down Robert Whittaker. He took down Derek Brunson. He took down Strickland 6 times, and he's still only 30 years old. The UFC, after that fight, said, hey, fight again. And you know what he told him? No, I need some time off. That's smart man. Smart man. Heal your body, heal your mind, work on your skills, then take one of these big, high-profile fights against a guy like Israel Adesanya in his own backyard, get paid a bunch of money, and be the best version of yourself. So he's doing everything right. I do expect improvements out of him, whereas Izzy's a legendary champion. But again, there's been spotty fights here and there. There's a year-long layoff. There's the fact that he's 35. There's the fact that he retired after his last fight because he was disinterested. Just not enough for me to take him. If he was large plus money, then you're going to maybe bet on some back class, but he's the short favorite as it stands right now on some books. So sign me up for Dricus.
All right, co-main event. We got Steve Erceg taking on Kai Kara France. Erceg, a minus 170 favorite. Kai Kara France can be had for plus 150. Who you got?
Yeah, so MMA is such a cruel game, right? On one hand, Steve Erceg's coming off a fight where he almost won the UFC championship. It's 2-2 going into the 5th round. He's winning the 5th round. And one of the all-time bonehead moves, similar to Cyril Gane versus Francis Ngannou, 2-2 in the 5th round. Cyril Gane ends up on top and drops down for that leg lock, blows the 5th round for himself and loses the fight. Erceg opting to grapple with Pantoja in the 5th round instead of breaking away and outlanding him. That cost him the fight. That cost him the fight. Had he won that fight, had he made just like one small, slight decision differently, he'd be currently the UFC champion. And him being booked against a guy like Kara France, do you think you'd get him at like minus 165, minus 175? Like, no chance. No chance. You know, Kai Kara France isn't exactly the number 1 contender. He's not the number 2, number 3, nor number 4 contender. He's a hell of a flyweight. He fights all the best guys. But the facts are he's on a 2-fight losing streak. And flyweight's a game where it's like you got to be young and zippy. And he's not old. Erceg's not old. But it's like you go from being one of the best to over the hill very quickly in the division. Erceg, we know he's at the top of his game. He damn near just won the championship. Kai Kara France, tons of skill, but again, I don't know that I would classify him as like top of his game, the best he's ever been. So there's a little bit of reservation for me there. And again, when you look at Kai Kara France's wins, it's not exactly like the most output. He's a very fine striker, loves that leg kick, demobilizes you, quick with his own footwork, moves side to side, but he relies a lot on just that accuracy, being able to hit you with that one shot and then jump out of dodge. That last fight with Amir Albazi, I thought he won. I thought he outworked Albazi. He outlanded the better shots. But again, he's not even big by flyweight standards. And sometimes his punches, if they don't outright KO you, like they KO chinny guys like Cody Garbrandt, or I wouldn't call Rogerio Bontorin chinny, but Kai Kara France is short on KOs over quality guys. It has knocked out a couple guys that are, iffy again in the durability department. He's never like KO'd a guy of a high level that was very durable to show me that he's some great power puncher. So to me, him and Erceg are mostly going to be in a striking battle. Erceg's got very good takedown defense. Even if you do take him down, look at Pantoja. He had to take him down 11 times. Erceg's get-up game is incredible. His submission defense game is incredible. Taking him down is not a viable path to victory unless you're a guy like that Pantoja that can do it the entire time. Kai Kara France is a striker that will mix in a takedown or two per fight, but that can't be the primary game plan. So mostly it's going to be a striking affair. I think Erceg's a much bigger guy. Even though Kai Kara France has a 1-inch reach advantage, Erceg's got a 4-inch height advantage. He's a giant flyweight. Mm-hmm. He's going to be mostly coming forward. They will land about the same level of strikes, the same number of strikes. But I feel like Erceg, being the bigger guy, is going to just have more pop on his shots. The other thing with Kai Kara France is that he's been knocked down in the UFC by Elias Garcia. He's been knocked down twice by Brandon Royval, and he's been knocked out by Brandon Moreno. So at least there's some somewhat questionable durability questions, at least on his part, for the flyweight division. Compared to Erceg, it looks like you'd take a frying pan to this guy's head and he'd be okay, man. Like, he is big and he is durable, and like putting him away is going to be a problem. So 5-round fight, I am hammering Erceg. 3-round fight, I got to be realistic. It's a flyweight fight. It's 2 strikers. They're both from the area, so there's not like hometown advantage towards either guy, but it's just going to be a brutal, likely 15-minute striking battle. I don't know that you can top ticket it. 5-round fight, I'm in on Erceg all day. Again, 3-round fight, a little bit more reservations on my part. But yeah, he's the pick for me. I think he gets it done. I think the guy's very quality. He's at the top of his game. No disrespect to Kai Kara France, but they give him the tough fights because he's willing to accept them, and this is one of them.
Don't have too much to add to what you said there. I like Erceg as well. I think his fight against Pantoja was an absolute revelation that this guy belongs at the top of the division. And getting taken down 9 times, but constantly got back up. The only moment that he felt like he didn't, that like maybe the moment was too big for him, was in round 5, where he decided to grapple when he could have just stayed at range. Pantoja was tired and taken the belt and taken my money, frankly, as well. But the only thing I will say is that Erceg fights out of Perth, Western Australia, and City Kickboxing is in Auckland. I'm going to do a little geography lesson with Cody Saftic right here.
Yeah, you do this every time.
How
is
far?
Let me guess. Is it 5 hours away? Is it 6 hours away?
5 hours by what?
Well, obviously not by plane. If it is by plane, I'm the biggest idiot. But still, when you fight in that part, Oceanic, is that what it's called? When you fight in that part of the world, yeah, sometimes you got to travel 6+ hours to give your boy a cheer on.
Well, one thing I will say to you, Cody, is that you really actually can't get there without flying.
Yeah, it's an island. It's an island on
Because
top.
New
It's not
Zealand,
like I'm ignorant. I get it. It's just like
Sydney.
us in the US. But
So
when you go on vacation, when people say like, "Oh, where are you from?" If they were to be like, "Oh, you're from Toronto, okay? Oh, well, how far is New York City?" It's only a 10-hour drive. It's
so
a 3-hour flight.
so
How far is Nashville, Tennessee? 10-hour drive. I can drive in my own province for 23 hours from top to bottom.
Yeah, it's like Thunder
That's the
Bay.
same distance it takes you to drive from Toronto to Florida.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, no, we're all the same. North America's all the same. And Europe, largely parts of Europe, it's all the same, dude. It doesn't take you long to get from here to there. So over there, okay, I get it. I'm not like a total dumbass here. Like, I get it. But yeah, Erceg is physically from where the event's happening. The other guy's from 6 hours away. Fair. Hometown advantage to Erceg. My bad. Even more reason to take him.
7.5 hour flight nonstop.
No
So that's like
way.
flying from here to like Mexico,
Yeah,
or from like where you are, Toronto to like Mexico City. Like that's the type of distance you're thinking of covering. So like,
Yeah, it'd be like
it's
from
one
here to
guy's
Germany.
home
That was
court.
my flight
It's
to Germany
not
to
the
7
other guy's
hours.
home court, as far as I can tell. Now, that
Okay,
being
fair.
said, there will be a
Fair.
bunch of Kiwis and a bunch of people who are fans of city kickboxing from that area of the world. It's so isolated from the rest of the world that obviously when cards come to Oceania in general, I'm sure there's definitely going to be a fan base for these guys. But one guy is the hometown guy. And I'm looking
That's
at
fair.
Air New Zealand nonstop. It costs you $11.84, and it's 7 hours and 25 minutes from
Ouch.
Auckland, New Zealand to Perth, Western Australia. So
This was a valuable lesson. You're right. It's a good
Sydney to
geographical
Perth
lesson.
would be like flying from Toronto to Vancouver, and that's just within Australia. That just shows you that like Perth is just so far off on an island, or not on an island, but so far off in the other side of the country that I don't know. It's like being from there, training out of there. The whole fan base is going to be around Erceg. I like Erceg as well for most of all the points that you brought up. Kaikar Francis is definitely a dangerous banger, and he got 2 takedowns against Amir Albazi, which is like pretty impressive. But if you can't hold him down, those takedowns aren't really going to really amount to much. Kaikar France, in my opinion, probably needs a knockout, or I think it's just going to be. I think Erceg just uses that size on him, and will come away victorious here. But we'll find out. And flyweight fights are always relatively close. All right, we got Mateusz Gamrot taking on Dan the Hangman Hooker. Gamrot, a -325 favorite. Hooker can be had for +275. I'm going to just break this one down pretty simply. Unless Cody's alleged guy goes into the back and says, Mateusz Gamrot, all you know what to do, all you know how to do is just chain wrestle over and over and over. And the one thing that your opponent really struggles with is guys who chain wrestle over and over and over. And then he just throws that game plan completely out the window and decides to just strike with Dan Hooker. I expect Gamrot, who's not the best at holding people down, but to probably get like 7, 8, 9 takedowns here. Make it kind of a slower, methodical, kind of boring fight, but it's very, very winnable for Gamrot. I like a Gamrot by decision. I think that's like in some spots still like -120 or something like that. I took a little bit last night. That's where I'm at with this one. What about you?
Yeah, if all things were even, and this was a year ago in Poland, yeah, dude, we definitely go on the Mateusz Gamrot. We take him by decision. He's a decision machine. The takedowns are going to be available. We take it. The same logic could have been applied to Carl Williams last weekend, which it was not. So to me, there is a little bit of reservation that this guy's not going to wrestle as much as he should. Second issue. Mateusz Gamrot's not exactly the most active guy. He's had a bunch of injuries. He's 10 months younger than Dan Hooker, and Dan Hooker's had a lot more mileage on the old body, but it seems like the years of wrestling have caught up to his knees. So he can chain wrestle. He can chain wrestle all day. His problem is he's not doing anything with the wrestling. He's taking them down. He's controlling them. There's not a whole lot of submission attempts. There's not a whole lot of ground and pound. His boxing, although not bad, there's not a whole lot of pop on his punches. So he relies on just having to take you down over and over and over again. The issue with that being that Dan Hooker's not some great grappler. He got taken down by Islam Makhachev, and he got taken down his last time out a couple times. Yeah, you can take him down, but he's got decent grappling, He's got 4 takedowns over Dustin Poirier when he had fought in Dustin Poirier. He had taken down Nasrat Haqparast 3 times. He's a BJJ black belt. He's a wily guy. He's always attacking off his back. And to me, that's where the problem becomes, is that Dan Hooker is a guy that his best quality is that he never quits on himself at any point. He's continuously going 100 miles an hour, straight forward, going for it. Now, you can take him down, you can rock him, but if you don't put him away, he's constantly coming forward. The key to beating him is finishing him, because if you do not finish him, he is a crowd pleaser. It's very easy to get behind him, especially when he's fighting a guy that's looking to crotch sniff him, right? Gamrot's going to try to take him down and hold him down. Single leg takedown, take him down, hold him up against the cage, pin him down, take his elbow away from him, take his post hand away from him, collapse his base, hold him down some more. And so when a guy like Hooker inevitably does get back up and he smashes you with a couple Travis Brown style elbows to the side of the head, and he does land an elbow on the clip out, and he does get to his range kick games, the crowd goes wild because that's what they came to see. So not only, yeah, he's from Auckland, you're right. Okay, it's not, there's no hometown advantage for him. But fans like his style of fighting. He's a fan favorite in that part of the world. They're already going to be behind him just because of from where he's from. But beyond that, he's a fan favorite with a very exciting fighting style. So he's going to be fighting for it the entire time. Judges now are looking for who's fighting and who's landing damage. And Gamrot, he ain't landing no damage, man. You look at Gamrot's last number of fights, right? His fight with Rafael dos Anjos. He took him down 11 times, and he had landed 57 significant strikes. And got rocked in the second round, too. Got outstruck in the second round. Not a good look. Got knocked down. His fight with Rafael Fiziev injured himself. Up until that point, he had landed 16 significant strikes. Through 7 minutes of fighting, he had landed 16 significant strikes. Okay, his fight with Jalen Turner, what a barn burner that was. He won a split decision, and he got outstruck by Jalen Turner 40-29. Gamrot only landed 29 significant strikes in 15 minutes of action. 4 takedowns, Paul, but he's not doing anything. You want to know a bigger concern than that? He got knocked down by Rafael dos Anjos, okay? He got knocked down by Jalen Turner. He got knocked down by Benil Dariush. He got knocked down by Arman Sarukian, and he got knocked down by Guram Kudalits. That's 5 times. None of those guys knocked him out. However, as you know, it's very difficult to win back around that you've been knocked down in. So the fact that he's getting knocked down in half of his UFC fights is problematic. Because Dan Hooker is always coming forward. He's always mixing it up. He's always throwing. You could be laying on him for 4 minutes. If he smacks you with one good shot and you do the stanky leg and the crowd goes nuts, you're going to lose the round. Now, this fight's not even money. It's not 50-50. It's not minus 140 Gamrot. He's like a 3-1 favorite. It's craziness. It's craziness. Now, again, 2 years ago, where they're just looking for control time and takedowns, fights in Vegas 2 years ago, maybe. Fights in Poland instead of Australia, maybe that changes something, but for a group that's saying we want damage and who's fighting, for an organization that's looking for guys that are looking to fight and are getting in the ears of guys that are just holding on to guys, none of this bodes well for a guy like Mateusz Gamrot, who got robbed against Guram Kudalits, who simply just landed the better shots. And he's a big guy. And Hooker's a big guy. You seen pictures of him on Instagram right now? He doesn't look nerdy anymore. The guy's absolutely shredded. People will counter with, Gamrot's shredded right now. Gamrot's always shredded. That's not a problem. Hooker is in career best shape. And so that's going to be another thing. Last thing I'm just going to flake on there, right? Gamrot's got a history of gassing the longer these fights goes. Like, he fights excellent the first round or two, and then in that third round, you can see him tiring. He relies on the takedown, gets a little bit of short damage. That's fine. Hot starter, slow starter at times, really. Middle part of it, taking you down, controlling you. By the end, he's generally tired. I would say Dan Hooker, a guy that doesn't seem to fatigue, who's fought 5 rounds before, who's landed 140 significant strikes on an opponent of Dustin Poirier's caliber before, who's coming off a win over Jalen Turner that he was getting his ass kicked early, but he persevered, he survived, and he turned the table. He rocked Jalen Turner. He did everything right in that second and third round to sway things in his favor, and he got the win. So for live underdogs and guys that'll fight for your dollar, look no further than Dan Hooker. He's got a great value. He should have some fan support. He's got a style that he should chip away at Gamrot. Betting him live after the first kind of makes sense. If anybody gets in Gamrot's ear about don't wrestle as much as you usually do, that's not going to be good. There's just more than enough reasons for me personally to say, why not get on Dan Hooker at this price tag? So I got Hooker. Knocking out Mateusz Gamrot, yeah, that's going to be a problem. So probably Hooker by decision. You know, if it has to be a split, if I need the rub from the judges that have been saying, yeah, one guy held on to the other guy and the other guy bloodied him up and landed elbows and landed a decent knee on the entry before he got taken down and did enough. You've seen it happen many times before. I've seen it happen many times before. Maybe I'd feel differently about it if Carl Williams would have landed 7 takedowns and 130-27 across the board, which he was capable of. Maybe I would feel differently. But that didn't happen, and I don't feel differently. So I feel like live underdog money from Hooker. I'm on that side.
Well, I won't step in your way on that one, but yeah, I'm kind of surprised that you go that way. I will say there's like Hooker hasn't fought anyone who really sticks to that wrestling game plan in quite some time. You go or like even guys that maybe want to get the fight to like a Claudio Puelles. It's just like, well, the guy can't wrestle, so he wants to get the fight to the ground. It's just never going to actually work out. Jalen Turner was able to get one, even though he absolutely gassed himself within 7.5 minutes and.
He gassed himself.
And yeah, but
like
what I'm saying is that Hooker really hasn't Gamrot, whether the UFC is in people's ears or whatever, anything like that, Gamrot's coming off of 11 takedowns against Rafael Dos Anjos last time out. Something tells me even if they get in his ear, he'll be like, I'll just go to PFL and try to win $1 million if you guys cut me. Yeah, no, not too many guys have really went in there with Hooker, and like I guess a lot of people are probably going in with Dan Hooker and trying to have a fight of the night, try to get that 50 G's, baby. But I don't know. I think it's kind of we'll see. We'll see how much improvements have been made for Hooker in terms of his takedown defense here.
I'll tell you what. We haven't done this in a while. And Tai Tuivasa is on the card, and I'm sure neither of us are betting him. I'll take a shoey bet on this fight, but I want 2-1. I don't want a 2.5 or 3-1. 2-1 shoey bet. You got Gamrot. I got Dan Hooker. You lose, you do 2. I lose, I do 1. Shoey bet, old time's sake, in old Perth, Australia, with big fat tie on a 4-fight losing streak on it.
Deal.
All right, let's do it.
Deal. 2-1 shoey bet. Give me that CLV. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED lights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, we move on to the aforementioned Tai Tuivasa. He takes on Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Jairzinho is a minus 220 favorite. The shoe we have in Tai can be had for plus 180. Glad that they're, I think we were complaining about it last time. It's just like, why would you put Tai Tuivasa in the Apex? Why would you put him in a warehouse where there's no fans and, it's just for your ESPN Plus deal or whatever? It's like Tai needs to be in this part of the world against another guy who has zero intention of taking him down. Both of them are going to meet in the center. Absolutely throw bombs on each other. One guy's going to die, and if Tai is the one who wins, he's going to get up on top of the cage, take a bunch of fans' shoes and drink and make an absolute mess of himself. Everyone will love it. It'll actually, be an absolute scene and everything like that. This is how you use Tai Tuivasa. I understand why Rozenstruik is the favorite. Very, very technically sound striker. But heavyweights are heavyweights. And I know Tai hasn't looked good in a while. His durability may have left him at the door, but I don't know. Laying minus 220 on a heavyweight striking affair between two guys that I think are just going to go in there and absolutely throw And Ty will probably be more accustomed to like the time of day, everything like that they're fighting. I imagine won't really have jet lag, everything like that. I think it's pretty clearly dogger pass type of fight for me. What about you?
Yeah, Ty's had an interesting career. He's just an entertainer. He's a pure entertainer. And if the UFC chose to utilize him in an entertainer role, then yeah, they would book him soft against guys that at the very least are fairly one-dimensional, like himself, will stand in front of him and put on a show. He might win. He jumps on top of the cage. He does his shoey. The crowd goes wild. It's a big highlight reel KO. And you distribute that, as we talked about earlier in the program, you distribute that as content, and that's what they want to see. On the other hand, the UFC is ruthless, and it's not Dana's fault. It's not the matchmaker's fault. It's not management's fault. It's like an AI system, and it's like you're feeding info into a system, and the system's telling you what's most profitable. And the bottom line is that Tai Tuivasa's got a base salary of like 120. So if he wins, you got to pay him like 240 plus a little bit of sponsorship from Venom. Doesn't matter. The UFC's on the hook for nearly $250,000, and he KOs some bum that they had to pay 20 and 20 probably. Yeah, it might be a contender series guy. He makes 10 and 10, but be a tough for a contender series guy in his first fight to fight Ty. So at least somebody with a bit of a name. You pay that guy 20 and 20. Now you're damn near $300,000. Not quite 270, let's say, because Ty won. It's a lot of money to get that viral moment. Whereas the slap fight guys collectively, that's costing you $7,500 to put on. And you could do it 30 times and get 30 clips and share that 30 more times. It's the same thing with the contender series guys. You don't think that you just put two guys that are in bad shape with minimal skill set that someone's just going to get KO'd? So Ty, we all love him. We love him. The fans love him. You want to see a guy like this fight on the UFC roster forever. How could you possibly cut him? Why would you want a guy like that going and fighting for the competitor? But the UFC is not worried about that. So as such, like the guy fights Cyril Gane. He's one shot away from a title fight. He knocks down Cyril Gane, wins the first round. Things went south after that. But that was a pinnacle moment for him. Then after that, you book him against Sergey Pavlovich. So you still have faith that he's a top 3 guy in the world. And old Pavlovich puts the beating on him. So we're back to reality. Nope, not for them. They book him against Alexander Volkov. And he looks lost, man. He gets tripled up on the striking count. He's so lost from the reach. He doesn't explode. He doesn't got that same type of bounce. He doesn't got that same type of desire. He gets knocked down. Volkov gets on top of him and Ezekiel chokes him. This is your red flag warning for the fight. Don't be booking him against the best guys, but they book him against Marcin Tybura. That's fair. Tybura is only a top 10 guy instead of a top 3 or 5. And he looks awful against Tybura. He looks disinterested. Now he's on a 4-fight losing streak. And he's supposed to right the ship with a fight with his Jairzinho Rozenstruik, who's on a bit of a roll right now. Won his last fight, headlining fight. Went the distance with Gaziev, who was a 3-1 favorite over him. Considered pretty decent. Like that Rozenstruik, the death touch Rozenstruik. Why? This is a tougher fight than Marcin Tybura. Like we're not getting on easier opponents at this point. He keeps getting on tougher opponents. It's like I got a soft spot for him. Let him go to PFL and win $1 million, right? But I don't know. Again, it's just like it's business at the end of the day. And what we know about Ty is that he is super athletic, but his career's gone through like these peaks and valleys. And he starts off as a semi-professional rugby player, super athletic, big man, but not really a fighter, rugby player. Transitions, comes to the UFC, 3-fight winning streak. Immediately follows that up with a 3-fight losing streak. Follows that up with a 5-fight winning streak. And then follows that up with a 4-fight losing streak. It's been a massive roller coaster. His wins outside of Derek Lewis, a fight that he was losing prior to clipping him. Outside of that, like his wins haven't been great. His losses, generally very good guys, but usually in fights where he's getting smoked out of. But he did one thing that most people didn't do, is that he took that little moment of fame and that little bit of moment of shine and drank beers out of a shoe and jumped on the top of a cage and made something for himself. And as a result, he's got like some decent gym he's working with in Dubai now. He lives over in Dubai. He's got a podcast. He's got a beer. Apparently, he'll get paid if he wins a fight from the UFC. He'll get paid $200,000. And then in sponsorship and endorsement outside of that, he can make about 250, 300. So he's fighting to get his name out there and to get some sponsorships. But that it explains why he's so disinterested in these fights. And the UFC, they're not caring to just book him against nobodies and get paid a bunch of money. So they're feeding him to tough guys. Now, this is a winnable fight for him because it's a heavyweight fight. I'm not saying he can't win the fight, but the losing streak, his heart not being in it, the Mostly beats on lower level guys. All of this is just bad for me. It's bad for me. Got knocked down twice against Pavlovich, got knocked down against Volkov, got knocked down against Cyril Gahn. You know, for a guy that made his mark on having a cast iron chin and coming forward and taking your best shot and giving one back, he's not taking your best shot no more. And he's not landing his best shots no more. So to me, the regression's there. He's still young by heavyweight standards, but the skills themselves, bit of a reel back. Rozenstruik, if you were going to fault him for like just one thing, is that there's been times where he's inactive. When he loses, it's only to the best guys. But yeah, in a lot of these fights, it's just like he's not pulling the trigger. He's not going for it as much as you'd like him to see him physically go for it. His ground game, questionable. You know, Gelton Almeida smokes him out of there. Curtis Blades was able to take him down. But he doesn't have to worry about that here. Ty's not going to take him down. Ty's not going to shoot. So really, he only has to worry about these big overhand rights and these big clubbing left hooks and these big one or two big power shots at a time. And all he has to do is stay to the outside and use low leg kicks and jabs. And that's what he actually prefers to do. He's a natural counterpuncher. He does his best work when his opponent's coming forward, outside of Francis Ngannou throwing a barrage of 20 strange-ass shots and one of them getting through. That's actually where he operates at his best. His last fight with Shamil Gaziev, once he tired him out, he stayed at range. He did exactly that. Landed 127 significant strikes over 4 rounds and eventually got the doctor stoppage. So he got some volume in that last fight. To me, that suggests maybe he's realized I need to throw more. He's coming off a win, good for his confidence. He's got the striking style to stay at range and just pick and choose. And whereas Ty is a heavy hitter and might be able to just club him with some big shot, fair, he just hasn't done it lately. And to me, I can't bank on him all of a sudden doing it now. So the crowd will be hot for him. The energy will be hot for him. It's two giant guys throwing punches. Certainly possible. I got to go with logic on this one and say that Rozenstruik just outpoints him from range. Could be a late stoppage if Ty gasses out. If not, 29-28 or 30-27 Rozenstruik in not the most entertaining fight. This one screams dynamite, KO of the night, all that. But I could see them both having a lot of respect for each other. Rozenstruik minding his P's and Q's, Ty getting outworked. Fight's a bit lackluster. Rozenstruik gets the win.
All right, we got Carlos Prates taking on the Leech, Jingliang Li. Prates a minus 370 favorite. The Leech can be had for plus 300. Who you got?
Well, this one's very interesting because on one hand, it's like I like Lee. The other hand, it's like there's way too many red flags. Like Jingliang Li's a guy that is now 36 years old, and it's a sad story. This is a sad story to me. People won't care. It'll get lost in the, MMA Times vault history of the game, I guess. But to me, it's a sad story. Jingliang Li does everything right. Company guy, takes the tough fights when they need them. Banger, fights to the best of his abilities. A guy that'll fight for your dollar. A guy that known as the Leech because he's always coming hard for 15 minutes. He's got durability. He's got punching power. He's actively trying to finish. And when I say fight for your dollar, he's willing to eye gouge a guy to get out of a guillotine choke, like seen in the Jake Matthews fight. So I'm in on a guy like Jingliang Li. Fringe contender, top 15, top 10-ish, but a serviceable company type guy. So he gets booked to fight Tony Ferguson in what will be the highest profile fight of his career. As we all know by now, pretty winnable fight for him. That would have done wonders. Instead, the UFC at the very last minute, and you remember that lead up to that, he got a suit and he did the UFC embedded, and he was like, oh, I'm finally going to a press conference because I'm in a high profile fight, and I got this suit, and I'm so excited to show it off to the world. The press conference gets canceled. They end up shifting Tony Ferguson to a fight with Nate Diaz. Chimaev ends up getting switched off and fighting Kevin Holland, and in that whole shuffle, what gets lost is Jingliang Li ends up fighting Daniel Rodriguez. Now, Lee weighed 170. Rodriguez weighed 180. So he gave up 10 pounds to the guy. He, in my opinion, did enough to win. Judges didn't agree. He lost a split decision. And then a short time after that, he pulled out of a fight with Michael Chiesa due to a spine injury. And apparently, it was a real bad back injury. So now he's gone through a couple major surgeries. He hasn't fought in 2 years. He went from supposed to fight Tony Ferguson in a spot that would have done, again, great things for him, to getting arguably robbed by a guy 10 pounds heavier than you in a split decision loss, to 2 years on the sidelines, to 3-1 underdog in your return fight. And you know why that is? Because the UFC don't give a shit. You're making money. You're going to fight what you're making, and they're going to give you these tough guys. And as such, they've given him Carlo Prates. So I like Jingliang Li. I like what he brought to the table. I liked his pace. I liked his forward pressure. I liked his durability. When this guy loses, he gets submitted, but he can take one hell of a punch, and that'll serve him well against a guy like Carlo Prates. But a bad spine injury major back surgery, 2 years off, 36 years old, coming off a loss all the same, even though you can make excuses for him. None of that would give you any sort of confidence to bet this fight. Yeah, but good news for you. Carlo Prates, why am I forgetting this guy's name? Who's the bum that Anthony Smith beat last? And we called it, but I took him anyway. Vitor Petrino. Bum. 5-1 favorite. You and I talked about it. Only can crushes. Has to finish guys early. Really not that good. But his highlight reel, damn, dude had a sick highlight reel. He's really not that good, but he's got a dope-ass highlight reel. That's fair. So what it causes is people look at undefeated. They look at he's knocking everybody out, and they want to get behind that. And it balloons up the odds to such that he's not really that good, but he's a 3-1 favorite, a 4-1 favorite. And then it becomes a problem. You look at his fight with Mitch Ramirez. He knocks him out, dude. It was so sick. But he's getting, like, not outworked, but through 6.5 minutes, he had landed 30 significant strikes. He's waiting on the shots. He's waiting for that big moment to capitalize. He does, and he beats Mitch Ramirez. And it's a nice knockout. His next fight against Trevin Giles, I got him bet big here because I like the guy. He's selective. He's smart. He's got high ring IQ. The Trevin Giles fight was cause for concern. He's not doing anything. He is just sitting there and allowing Trevin Giles to outwork him with the jab. The first round is pitiful. The second round is pitiful. He's about to be down 2-0 to Trevin Giles, and boom, he cold cocks him and knocks him out. So visually, it looks good. On paper, it looks good. If you're wiki capping or topology capping, this shit all looks good. The bottom line is he got outstruck 68-37 before he knocked him out. And this is Trevin Giles we're talking about. So then they give him Charles Radke. Charles Radke is a 55er. He's done his best work on the regional scene against limited opposition at 155. At 170, he looked lost in there. And as such, a big guy like Prates puts a little bit of heat on him and puts him away. Fair game. Can't discredit the guy. He's got 3 nice wins, 3 nice knockouts. But one has to imagine if somebody was to say pressure forward and fight him for a hard 15, take his best shots and return fire, and throw up some more volume, that they could beat him. And Jingliang at his best, which he's certainly not, he comes forward. He's got one hell of a chin on him. He has better volume. He's got higher experience. He's fought in the better level of guys. The only thing is the spine injury, dog. So I'm actually going to take Jingliang, but it'll be the PRP pick. Like I can't really get behind it as much financially because there's like not just red flags. There's like giant crimson flags over this one. But all the same, the dog money is just too good to resist. So I should have done it on Petrino. I cowered it out. This one, whatever. I'll take the shot.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add to that. I mean, the Leech at his best, like against like Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos, getting a 3rd round finish, getting 2 takedowns, 3 knockdowns, like that style of fight wouldn't be so horrible here. If he's able to mix in wrestling, which with the spinal issues is a big if.
A big if.
Definitely obviously going to be tricky to like have the confidence to shoot takedowns. I will give some like, kudos or credit to Carlos Prates, who openly smokes cigarettes. I think that's kind of hilarious for a pro athlete. Apparently he smokes 6 or 7 cigs a day, and like he found it, like he was smoking a cig after getting like his knockout last time, and like there's like video of him like chain smoking darts, and then they tell him that he got his $50,000 bonus, and he's like, I mean, it's kind of like
and
for
Paul,
a pro athlete, for a pro athlete, he's not not the hero we asked for, but the hero we need. And frankly, he probably has low volume because he knows if he gets into a high-paced, striking affair, it's like he's a smoker. He doesn't have, Tony Ferguson versus RDA at altitude type of cardio here. He's got to mind his P's and Q's. And credit where credit's due. The guy's an absolute sniper when he does land. Like, he can knock anybody's lights out, within reason, of course. Like, outside of maybe the top 10. Like, the guy's super, super slick. But there's questions about his grappling, for one. There's questions about, if someone is
Australian
able to,
smokes.
if
They're
some,
obviously a lot stronger too. Okay, so
yeah,
he's gonna go down there. He'll bring 2 or 3 packs with him, but then he'll run through those and realize, oh shit, I gotta go to the corner store. At that point, it's fair game. You thought Marlboro Reds were tough? Nah, dog. And yeah, you see that video he's smoking. You think he was smoking? He got a call saying you just made $50,000 extra, and he didn't double dart right off of that. Of course he did. So I never even really factored that in. He does not throw because he knows he can't because he's a smoker. Paul, you are a genius. It
yo,
sounds like you're
bro.
on Jingliang too.
Here's another thing. You know how
The guy's known as the
expensive
leech,
cigarettes are?
Jingliang.
You know how expensive cigarettes are in Perth, Western Australia? 40 the price of one, or the price of one pack of Marlboro cigarettes is 47 Australian dollars, which is like 24 pounds. So let's just convert this.
24 pounds? Oh, geez. Like 35 bucks? What? 36 bucks?
We'll do it to USD for the people who actually
US,
watch
okay.
to
Yeah, fair.
AUS. All right. So what was that? 40. What did I say? 42?
Yeah.
That's like 27 US dollars, dog. It's like
27 US dollars.
So
Like
in
35 bucks Canadian.
It's like 35 bucks
Not quite,
Canadian
like
for a pack of
33.5.
cigs.
So he needs the knockout bonus.
He
is what
needs
you're
that
saying.
knockout bonus. He is going to, or else he's going to go broke trying to smoke cigs down under. But yeah, I think it's a dogger pass. I mean, with Prates, it comes down to volume. It's just like I struggle. And yeah, the Giles fight, like he was way down in that fight. It was looking like a really bad bet until he lands the bomb. He obviously is live to land that bomb, super, super slick and powerful with his strikes when he does land, but there's not enough
League
there
never
that
been
it's like
knocked out.
if he doesn't land the big one, it gets kind of ugly. I don't know. Here's like a wild, like out of left field is like, and the Leech doesn't have too much history of it. Don't get me wrong, but Leech by sub is like outrageously wide. Probably doesn't happen, but
I don't hate it.
maybe have
I
like
don't
the
hate it.
smallest sprinkle. I did see that Prates was training with like the fighting nerds a little bit, or at least there was a picture of him and Kyle Barallo. So like
Well, that would help.
that would definitely help his game, and maybe he's put the cigarettes down and is taking things seriously. But until then, until I get confirmation on that, I assume he's a smoker and an absolute hero for that. But I don't know if I would want to back him at minus 370 if this fight gets extended. So
one
Leech for me
last
too.
thing, Paul. One last thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, he didn't just pick up smoking, and the card is on his birthday, and he's turning 31. So he is a 31-year-old smoker, and you think his birthday is on Saturday and he ain't smoking? You're crazy, man.
At least
So,
it starts early enough that like he can wake up, have his coffee, cigarette, head over, get into a fight, and then like just chain smoke the rest of the day after that.
chain smoke, yeah. Yeah, unless the guy known as the leech sucked the oxygen out of his lungs, and even then the smoke would definitely make him feel better afterwards and the pain and agony of defeat. So I don't know where your head's at, but I'm gonna take Lee.
I think it's pretty clearly a dogger pass, and watch Lee gets absolutely folded. But I mean, at minus 370, it's just tough for me to get to that number on somebody who's low volume and is very, very dependent on that knockout with gloves that don't seem to be, But I guess his last one was like a knee to the body that folded his opponent. So he has other ways to do it without using those damn gloves. Yeah. All right, we got Junior Tafa taking on a Valter Walker. Junior Tafa, minus 130 favorite. Walker can be had for plus 110. Striker versus grappler. Pretty low-level heavyweight affair between the two of them. Do you have a hot lean on this one? Like, where's your head up?
But no, just all theory. So if you want to talk some theory on it, I like Valter Walker, right? The theory would be that he's going to win this fight, that he's going to make this fight look easy, and that at short plus money, which you can get him at in some books, it's like, seems like too good to be true. On the other hand, yeah, it feels super trappy. Basically, he's not like his brother Johnny, who I don't think he is related to Johnny, but all the same, we'll run with that narrative that they are brothers. He's a grappler at heart. He wants to take guys down, and he's had success doing it. All of his wins on the regional scene are when he's able to go out there, get the takedown, and apply that pressure. to say he's got bad cardio is not factual. Like his win before coming to the UFC against Alex Nicholson, I get it, but it went to the fourth round and he's able to get him out there in the fourth. So he's been able to largely take guys down, control them. Jumping into the UFC, you do get those octagon jitters. You do get those first time where everything's different. You know, the flight was different, the hotel is different, the catering is different, the staff is different, the environment, the fans, all these things are different than what you're accustomed to. And a lot of people will underperform in that initial fight. In Valker's case, he 100% underperformed in that initial fight, but he's down 2 rounds against Brzezinski and he owns him in the third round. Like he finally clicked it and realized I need to get going and didn't look bad. He's still only 26. If you look at him physically and all the stuff before the Brzezinski fight leading in, he's very soft around the body. You look at him stuff leading into this fight, he looks like he's shredded. So to me, here's a young man that learned his lesson. When you're undefeated, it's easy to be the top guy. It's easy to be running through people. You don't realize you've done anything wrong. When you lose, it causes you to readdress your weaknesses. And why did you lose? And what could you have done better? So I'm fully expecting a better version of him simply because it's his sophomore outing in the UFC. I'm expecting a better version of him because he's 26 and getting better because he's going to learn from his mistakes from that defeat. All good stuff that I would say should serve him quite well. Junior Toff, meanwhile, like he sucks, man. He's no good. The UFC signed him to be a banger. He's a banger. You know, bring the guy in, and if he hits you, he's gonna put your lights out. But to this point, he's just not done anything. His fight with Muhammad Usman, nothing happens. Usman takes him down twice. Usman controls him. Usman landed 7 significant strikes and still beat this guy by unanimous decision. So problematic, right? It's a problematic start. Looks awful, awful. No get-up game. No takedown defense. Okay, he got up. Then he gets Parker Porter. People will just brush that one off. If you watch it back, Parker Porter shoots a takedown. Tafa grabs the cage. That allows him to not get taken down. And then he absolutely just smokes Parker Porter out of there. So on paper looks good. To me, this guy can't grapple. He's got bad takedown defense. He's got no get-up game. And then he gets Marcos Rogerio de Lima. So imagine you are a credited kickboxing champion. You're brought into the UFC for absolutely no reason other than you're kickboxing. You can't grapple. You can't wrestle, but you're a credited kickboxing champion. Your brother can't wrestle and is a terrible striker, but you're supposed to be the outlier. You're great. Good. And Marcos Rogerio de Lima hobbles him with leg kicks in the first 3 minutes of the fight. Like he's done 3 minutes in, his leg is just gone. This guy's a accredited kickboxing champion. Okay, so I don't think his striking's that good. I don't think his grappling's that good. I don't think he's that good. He had a bit of a name, just similar to his brother. They'll utilize him by throwing. If you look at Justin Tafa, his first 2 UFC fights, they're both on UFC main card pay-per-views. Main card pay-per-views. His first 2 fights, and he's awful. Why? Well, because they're big heavyweights in that part of the world, and they're strikers, and it could deliver. So you give them a little bit of love, but I see very little redeeming quality to him. Walker, meanwhile, although not a great first UFC fight as well, fair, he has to go back to what made him successful on the regional scene, what made him undefeated 10-0, and that's wrestling these guys. He knows he's got better cardio. He knows he's got better wrestling. He knows he's got better ground game. It just comes back to a little joke that we've been running throughout the course of this show, which is somebody going to get in his ear and be like, do what your brother does? But don't. And if you just watch your brother get flatlined, striking with Volkan, and his career going to shat, he probably wishes he wrestled more, but he can't because he's no good. Don't make the same mistakes. You can wrestle. You can grapple. You can push a pace. Do that, man. Just do that. But again, that's just all theory because now I need to trust for them to go in there and execute these things that we talk about, which is not always the case. So I got Valter Walker. And again, he could make this look real easy. In the same breath, he could go out there and just, make a fool out of me. And I couldn't be overly surprised, I suppose. It's middling heavyweight action. And because it's such, dogger pass, baby, give me the underdog.
He does look like I was just looking through his Instagram earlier. Like he does look like significantly more cut coming into this. He came in at 264 last time. Be interesting to see on Saturday what he tips the scales at, because he definitely does look like he's lost some mass, which you kind of gas out and lose a fight that way late. Lose the later rounds against somebody like Brzezinski, get kind of doubled up on volume and stuff like that. goes back to the drawing board. It'll be kind of interesting. I mean, here's the thing with the game, like with betting. It's like, are you really going to, with your bank account, like guess whether somebody's going to be in his ear and tell him not to wrestle? Like, I don't know if you can actually you can't let that type of thing affect you, because a lot of it's kind of hearsay. I guess it is true for Mikhail. It is true for Mikhail, but all the other stuff, it's just kind of like rumors and so on and so forth. I'm with you. Valter Walker, I mean, everybody who's tried to take down Junior Tafa outside of Parker Porter, who, fence grab just wasn't really paid attention to. Everybody wants to take him down, is able to take him down, and that's what Valter Walker's best part of his game is. Watch enough Johnny losing by knockout fights, and I'm sure Valter Walker wants nothing to do with that. Stick to a game plan. You'll probably get booed in that part of the world, but that's what's going to get you the win here. If you just stand and trade, then you're gonna get knocked out. So yeah, I'll ever so slightly. I'm gonna pay attention to like the weigh-ins before I do anything from like a betting perspective. Want to see like how much he comes in at and so on and so forth. But small heavyweight underdog for me as well. We got Josh Culibao taking on Ricardo Ramos. Culibao -140 favorite. Ramos can be after +120. Ramos is kind of like a guy that you're kind of like looking at now, and you're like, what exactly is it that you do around here? Right? Last two fights, losing by guillotine choke against Charles Jourdain and Erosa. Erosa's pretty crafty, but like the Jourdain one was an absolute shocker that this is how he's, losing to him. Culibao, both this card or this fight absolutely just kind of screams like pink slip fight at this point. Like Contender Series started last night. And credit where credit's due, there was like some pretty good fights last night, or Tuesday night on Contender Series. There were some people I was like, maybe that's because like my idea of UFC level has definitely been skewed, but I was like, not the worst prospects on episode 1. Guys that I could see fit in, and who knows what their upside is, but fit in and have some entertaining fights pretty much immediately. So, 4 decent ads. One of them maybe, the guy who had already lost to Brenton Ribeiro. There's red flags about that guy's chin for sure, but hopefully we can exploit them moving forward.
He looked real good, and I credit that. And he said it himself. He's like, I lost to Brenton Ribeiro, and that caused me to change everything because I didn't fight my game. He still
got knocked down though in round 1.
Yeah, it was like a holy shit. This Georgian guy just whiffed on a giant shot, which grazed him and caused him to fall off balance. But I don't think he was seriously hurt. He popped. Trust me, dude. I had the Georgian guy. He popped right back up, and I was like, yeah, we're done. Georgian guy was awful. No striking technique, no cardio. Wrestling was abysmal. The Brazilian Bruno Lopez, he lost, and that made him infinitely better. He took some decent shots. Chin looked okay. He deserved a contract. Only guy that didn't was the guy that didn't, Hamed, and that was a tough one because like he took the fight on 6 days' notice. Like you got to cut him some slack, but comparatively to the other fights, which were all really good, yeah, his stuck out a little bit. So it's a tough go. Those guys have to change up their game plans because you got to appease Dana. Culibao, he's got a crazy good style. He likes to appease. It's Ramos that it's like, I don't know that he wants to stand in front of Culibao for 15 minutes. Like wrestling would be his best path.
Ramos like appeases, but like for all the wrong reasons. It's like his fights are ending pretty quickly, but he's on the losing side of it. And like the big question mark is like in the lead up to the Austin Lingo fight, he comes in 9 pounds overweight. They end up having to cancel that fight. And he keeps fighting at 145 and then gets guillotine choked against Erosa and Jourdain. So you start to wonder, is the cut to 145 just absolutely ruining this guy? Take him over to the other side of the world and get him to, cut weight and do all of that. So many question marks around Ricardo Ramos. No doubt that like he can be pretty flashy, spinning elbows and some some pretty, flashy submissions, flashy techniques. But I think the guy with more substance here is Culibao. So for my money, he's the guy to be backing. What about you?
Really comes down to the judges again. Like, I think it comes down to what the judges are looking at. Culibao's got a brawling type style. He wants to come forward. He wants to throw in combinations. He is a big guy for the weight class, and that's where he thrives, is if you're willing to exchange with him in the pocket. It seems that when guys are able to shoot on his hips and, hold him down, that's where like things get a little bit greasier for him. His takedown defense is not great. He'd be rocking a 67% takedown defense in the UFC. But again, his last fight against Danny Silva, he got taken down 4 times and only controlled for like 3 minutes. But those 4 takedowns were the reason he lost. He outstruck Danny Silva 87-45. That's solid. The 4 takedowns and the submission attempt loses him these close rounds. So again, you're at the mercy of the judges on that one. His fight prior to that against Lerone Murphy, he got knocked down by Lerone Murphy. He got taken down 3 times by Murphy, almost submitted twice, and Murphy controlled him for 7.5 minutes. So that one is a way bigger concern as far as I'm concerned. When he shines, it's when guys are willing to brawl with him. If you've got suspect cardio, his pace and his style of pressure and causing you to move off your back foot, that'll tire you. Eventually, you're forced to engage with him. That's where he can have some success. But even Shaolin Numbayake was able to take him down twice. Charles Jourdain didn't take him down, but had 3 submission attempts against him. Culibao's grappling is what I would suggest is lacking. Ramos, meanwhile, he's a wild card in that on paper, this guy's good. In actuality, this guy's a fraud. He reminds me of Charles Oliveira so much. Oh, sorry. That's such a slap in the face.
Wow.
He reminds me. No. You know where I'm going with it.
I'm going to cut that and post it on Instagram for the clips.
You know where I'm going with it. He reminds me of Charles Oliveira when Charles Oliveira first debuted in the UFC. So bad. He's got vicious skill, man. BJJ black belt. Awesome in transition. He striking legit. He's the only guy in the UFC to have 2 wins by spinning back elbow. Knocked out Danny Chavez senseless a minute 12 in. Knocked out Ayman Zahabi with a spinning back elbow in that one. So 2 wins by... I said only fighter. That's a lie. Molly McCann has that too. And similar to Molly McCann, not good. Not good. So spectacular moments.
Mount Rushmore technique.
Crazy striking. Leg kicks for days. This guy will just demobilize you with that low calf kick. Very slick. He's still only 29 years old. His fight with Bill Algeo, he took Algeo down 8 times. That one aged pretty okay as far as I'm concerned, and is indicative of what this guy's capable of when he's at his best. Furthermore, he mostly spends his training camps at Team Alpha Male, which is a great gym, and yet he's out of the best gym in the world for guillotine chokes, and he keeps getting caught in guillotine chokes. His last 2 fights, not only has he been tapped, he taps very quickly once they're applied. Again, at his best, I think there's a lot of good redeemable qualities to his game. At his worst, I just don't think he's got the heart of a lion. And we've talked about backing some of these guys on the card and they'll fight for your dollar mentality, which is what we like to get behind. Don't know that Ramos is looking to fight for your dollar. Furthermore, high-level BJJ black belt, which he is, and he's been submitted in the first round in his last 2 fights. Julian Erosa, you mentioned, we'll give him a pass. Guy's got a nasty guillotine choke and just put it to really good use in his last fight as well. Yeah, he's a problem. The one to Charles Jourdain, I'm not so sure I can give him a pass on that. So they both got like giant glaring issues. I think it is totally dog or pass, which is Culibao currently is the dog. Is that right?
No, Ramos is the dog currently.
Ramos is the dog. It feels to me like there's good argument on both sides. Culibao, I don't know. Maybe there's some type of hometown pop for him. He's actually going to be trying to fight. He's coming forward. He's trying to pressure. And if that's what the judges are looking for, then by all means, he wins the fight. To me, though, and the reason I'll take the dog here and go with Ricardo Ramos, it is very much the takedowns. Ramos got 2 takedowns against Julian Erosa, who's an excellent grappler. He got 2 takedowns against Charles Jourdain, who's not an excellent grappler, but all the same, he took him down. He got 8 takedowns on Bill Algeo, 2 takedowns. I guess it's all he's fought a lot of crappy guys too. Fair enough. 3 takedowns over Ayman Zahabi. Got a takedown over Kun Hu Kang, Mr. Perfect. Again, he's still only 29. He's not old. He's not shot to bits. His wrestling is pretty decent. And generally, even in these fights he's losing, his last 2 fights, submitted both times, he still got 2 takedowns in both of those fights. So if he comes out here and does exactly that, shoots the takedowns on Culibao, well, we've already outlined Culibao's grappling issues. He got taken down 4 times by Danny Silva, taken down 3 times by Lerone Murphy, twice by Shaolin Numbayake, controlled in a lot of those fights, nearly submitted by a guy like Charles Jourdain. I would suggest that there's a clear path to victory for Ramos to just shoot those takedowns. And whereas Jourdain got the neck fair and Arosa got the neck fair. Culibao grabbing the neck and submitting. I'm like, I don't see that quite as much.
He's never
I
won.
do see him.
He's never
Yeah,
won
no
by. He's
submissions.
never won by guillotine before. So that's
Yeah,
another good
yeah.
thing for Ramos. Is
And,
that
and if you get guillotined 3 times in a row, like, yeah, no, the guy from Contender Series does in fact deserve to take your job. You got to go now, dude.
For sure.
Dude. But I kind of got to give him the benefit of the doubt. So to throw the narrative out the window of the hometown guys, even if it's not hometown, City Kickboxing or New Zealand or Australia, the last time that they were down there, they went 4-4 overall. So there's no home cooking. They're going to let these guys fight. The better man should win. I prefer damage over control. And as we talked about earlier, I'm taking Dan Hooker based on that theory. This is a poor man's Dan Hooker. And in this instance, I'm hoping control and ground and pound and submission attempts and all that does win outright. So give me Ramos for no other good reason than he's plus money into dogger pass fight for me.
Okay. Now we got Luana Santos taking on Casey O'Neill. Luana Santos a -150 favorite. O'Neill can be had for +130. Who you got?
I don't know. Sometimes you overthink these women's MMA fights. And case in point being last week. So last week, it's like, you and I sat here at length and discussed the 3 women's MMA fights that were on the card, right? The first one that comes up, Stephanie Luciano versus Talita Alencar. We talked about day and night about Luciano, minus the dengue fever, was younger and was faster and was bigger and was better. And yeah, she got taken down on the Contender Series, but had gotten better since then. But it's women's MMA, and you get a little nervous at the end, so you drop her down more than you should, and she looked awesome. She went clean, right? The other one being Yana Santos versus Chelsea Chandler, right? We talked for 15 minutes about Chelsea's big, and she'll miss weight, which she did, and she'll be able to get takedowns, and she'll be able to get control time. But Yana, at her best, she's just got better volume and more experience and better striker and state of the outside, and she makes it look easy. So it's like you sometimes, and I'm guilty of it especially, is that you give the good point for both fighters and then it talks you out of having any real type of confidence behind someone that you want to bet. And I find like that does happen, especially so in women's MMA, where it's like, you just don't know. And this one, it gives me the same type of vibe. Casey O'Neill I can't compare her to a Paige Van Zandt type, but she's easy on the eyes. At the very least, she's got a look to her. She's got a different look to her. She's marketable. The UFC sees it. She's young and she's got some talent. And the early portion of her career, she's booked fairly soft. At some point, though, they're paying you money. They're trying to move you along. So they're going to maybe give you a little bit more than you're ready to handle at that current point. She beat Roxanne Modafferi. Okay, so that's not the issue. The issue is that Roxanne Modafferi landed 120 significant strikes on her and took her down twice. So, yeah, Roxanne's got the most fights in women's MMA history. She's got BJJ black belt. She's got a judo black belt. She's got tons of experience. That's fair. For her to hit you that many times is a case in point that you have bad striking defense. She's extremely hittable. She's vulnerable at times. She hasn't got a whole lot of power. She doesn't move her head. Her footwork is generally linear. It's in and out. She's not moving side to side and getting away and evading stuff. And then for Roxanne to take you down twice is a problem. Now, she outlanded Roxanne, but the fact that one of the judges sitting cage side scored the fight for Roxanne Modafferi, that was your first red flag that it's too much too soon. They did the same thing with Paige, did the same thing with Macy Barber, although she's turned it around. Sometimes you got to let these girls get 5-10 fights in the division before you can really market them as the next big contender. But the UFC just doesn't necessarily give them that luxury, and they didn't in her instance. Her next fight after struggling with Roxanne is Jennifer Maia, a former world title challenger. And so, yeah, again, there was redeemable qualities. She was willing to strike with her. Her striking didn't seem to have much pop on it. She wasn't able to get Maia's respect. Maia generally dog-walked her, outstruck her, put up the significant volume. You and I both were behind Maia in that fight, and Maia cashed as a good-sized underdog. So it's time now. It's first loss for Casey O'Neill, but now you've seen, she loses as the favorite. She got outworked. It's the second straight fight where she's been hit over 100 significant times. She needs to go back to the drawing board, not another tough fight. But they gave her Ariana Lipski. And now is the red flags are starting to glare up all over because Lipski takes her down. Lipski out-grapples her. Lipski submits her. And on top of that, also outstruck her. So Casey O'Neill can be marketable. She can be a likable character. She can be easy on the edge. She can be all these different things. If she's not giving you the result in the cage, you're only going to be able to take her so far. And so to me, again, that is the issue, is that she's very hittable. She's lost her last 2 fights in a row. She's not looked very good her last 3 fights in a row. And instead of giving her this bounce back type fight, they've given her somebody that's younger than her and actually on a winning streak and has all the skills that she's lacking. And These aren't good fights. Furthermore, she's doing her thing in Australia, right? Her dad was one of her original coaches, and she's King Casey, and they were Phil Baroni fans, and that's all well and good. Then it's like, hey, we need to get to a bigger gym so that Casey can take it to the next level. So they realize she's outgrown her comfort zone here. We got to take the show on the road, and they choose Extreme Couture, which is a fine gym, but she gets lost in the shuffle. She gets lost in the shuffle. She's not fighting confident. She loses 2 fights in a row. Her game hasn't progressed, so she now leaves Extreme Couture and goes to Fight Ready MMA. Excellent choice. The problem being that, one, it's still on the other side of the world. Two, if you're just shook, you couldn't hang at extremes, so you decide a quick camp is going to fix everything. Like, it's not necessarily the answer. So, she's plus money, and that looks good. CF dot model, that looks good. But what did we fall in love with? Because her striking is proven to not be elite. Her grappling is proven to not even be good, let alone elite. She's willing to fight. She's got that dog in her. She's got volume. Like, there's not enough for me to get behind here. Luana Santos, meanwhile, she just fought a month ago. So on one hand, she's taking this fight on short notice. On the other hand, she just fought, so she's in good shape. She took no damage. She's 2 years younger than Casey. She's on a nice little streak right now. She's a judo black belt. And that one's interesting because, one, Casey ain't taking her down, but she could take Casey down. Case in point, she took down Stephanie Egger twice, up a weight class. She missed weight for whatever reason, but Steffi Egger is a high-level judo black belt who's giant, and she took her down twice, and then her last time out, Agapova's a bum, but took her down and just absolutely routed her. Point being is that she's got some decent striking. She's slick. The Juliana Miller fight, she literally just lit up Miller, pillar to post, landed 63 significant strikes in 3 minutes and 41 seconds. 63 significant strikes landed in 341. So someone like Casey O'Neill, who's known to be very hittable, she'll be able to put up volume. That judo black belt, that ability to take down opponents and neutralize them, that should also be on the table. She wins 2 of these 3 rounds. I'm hoping the first 2 coast in the third. If that's the case and she's up 2 rounds going into the third, do we think Casey O'Neill's a third round finisher? Does she got some potent killer instinct or some ace in her back pocket that she's going to pull out? No, she's down 2 rounds. That's it. So Luana just needs to go in there and control those first 2 rounds. Use your striking, bait her in, cause her confidence to be shook a little bit, mix in those takedowns, win the first 2 rounds, run away if you need to in the third. I don't care. Point is, take her down. And again, the Agapova fight, Agapova's no good, but long striker, why strike with her if you don't need to? So took her down and made it look effortless. Takes the back, takes the rear naked choke. This fight, do the same thing. Go out there, mix in a bit of striking, take her down, take the back. If you get the rear naked choke, great. If not, body triangular, neutralizer, hold her down. That's what needs to be done. So I'm a personal level, I'm a fan of Casey O'Neill. And she got that dog in her, and she throws and she throws and she throws on a financial business, level-headed level. I gotta go Luana. Gotta go Luana Santos here.
The kids would call Casey O'Neill hype train. Let's face it, man. Like, that 4-fight winning streak, it's like, it doesn't get much that's kind of the bottom of the barrel. They were trying to build her up, and then they built her up and put her in with legitimate opponents, and she looked not ready whatsoever. Shayna Dobson, Laura Procopio, Bad Shevchenko, and then Roxanne Modafferi loses to her, gets doubled up on striking, and never fights in MMA again because she's just like, well, if I can't hang with that, then there's no business being here anymore. I think it was kind of a hype train, and 100% went off the tracks when Lipsky subbed her there. Everything I've seen from Santos leads me to believe that she actually has some serious potential here.
I think she's actually legitimately good.
Being able to take down Egger. I mean, yeah, she did miss. That is so bizarre because she fights at 125, but came in at 139 for a 135 fight that she, I guess, took on short notice, but messed up her weight cut for whatever reason there. Very, very strange.
Still won.
But yeah, still won against a judoka the size of Egger. That's a feather in your cap. And then, Agapova, that was an absolute destruction. And Miller, she was coming off, Juliana Miller was coming off of winning the
Ultimate Fighter. Miller was
winning
the
Ultimate
too.
Fighter, but she lost to Hardy in between. But then just went out there and just went 60 significant strikes in 3.5 minutes. And this girl's got some serious pop to those strikes. I know Casey O'Neill can put up volume, but none of those strikes that are landing, it's volume, but it's like I don't know if it's gonna like gain anybody. It's not gonna gain anybody's respect. She doesn't have, knockout power in those hands. I think Santos can probably do whatever the hell she wants in this fight. I love the CF dot model, but it won't be me in this fight. I think Santos is the sharp side in that matchup. All right, we got Jack Jenkins taking on Herbert Burns. Jack Jenkins, a -800 favorite. Herb can be had for +550. Oh, the Herbert Burns fights. I mean, he's a very good 5-minute fighter. And then if he
3.5,
it's like very good, maybe a stretch. He's a solid 5 or 3.5 minute fighter. It's like he has some power in his hand, potentially can find a decent submission on you, but he the cardio just falls off an absolute cliff every single time after that. I mean, it's kind of a cop-out, but it's like -800 Jack Jenkins. Hate it, right? I feel like at the very least, if this fight gets through one round, you're probably going to get like a similar price maybe to the -800. Maybe it's -1,000, but he's already up around. Like getting involved -800. I know you do it for PRPs and stuff like that, but it's like there's not much for me to do with Jack Jenkins. I even look at like some of the props here. And it's like him to win in round 2 is like, and he's not much of a potent finisher. Him to win in round 2 is like +250. It's like, well, then you have to like rely on Herbert Burns to like actually survive the full 5 minutes. I mean, everything about this fight kind of leads me to believe that like I've been priced out of any sort of action. Our friend Mick did say that he has like Herbert Burns by submission in round 1 at 20 +2,500, which like don't hate that. If you're gonna go down that route and throw a little sprinkle on anything, it's probably, I mean, Jack Jenkins has been submitted twice in his career. He's never been knocked out. If Burns is gonna do it, it's probably early in round 1, but I don't know. We've seen this time and time again with him. Just it falls off a damn cliff. So outside of like a super, super long wild prop like that on Burns, I think it's Jack Jenkins, but at -800, I'm not entirely sure what to do with it. What's your take here?
it's a tough one to get a read on because on one hand, it's like I will bet anybody on the roster over Herbert Burns. That is not a lie. There's not one single member of the roster that I would not bet over Herbert Burns. And you could find me somebody that you're like, what about this guy? And it's like, well, give me the line. And if the guy's that bad that I can get plus money betting against Herbert Burns, take my money if there's somebody I can get plus money value in a fight with Herbert Burns. To say I don't like him is an understatement. Now, keep in mind, part of that's sour grapes because he beat Nate Landwehr. Part of that's all he got going for him, man. Nate Landwehr ran himself face forward into the knee. If that he didn't do that, had he just taken like one step and said, you know what, I'm going to clear the air and then beat this guy up, he would have smoked him. And then he follows that up by summoning Evan Dunham, a shell of Evan Dunham. And then right there, it's like he's got 2 UFC wins. And so all the times I said he was so bad and all this trash I talked about him, now like Herbert Burns fans are suddenly, the guy's reinvented. He's not good. He's never going to be good. And similar to Claudio Silva or Ronnie Yaya, they win fights in the UFC, but they're not good. They're never going to be good. Extremely one-dimensional, no cardio, no striking, no wrestling, just 3 minutes of I'm going to just try to submit you as quick as possible. And if it doesn't go my way, quit. Not get knocked down, not get submitted, quit, right? I can't get behind. So as you outlined, it's fight with Daniel Pineda, right? He had won his first 2 fights, beats Nate Landwehr, beats Evan Dunham. Keep in mind his stretch here. He subs Louis Gomez in Titan FC, 2 minutes and 24 seconds. He subs Derek Manor, who once upon a time threw a fight, in 2 minutes and 29 seconds, right? So these are both less than 2.5 minutes. His fight with Nate Landwehr, he took him out 2 minutes and 43 seconds into the first round. So 3 in a row, sub 3-minute fights. His fight with Evan Dunham, done in 1:20. 4 in a row now, sub 3-minute fights. So that's where his mark's at, that 3-minute mark. Daniel Pineda is a big boy. He's a BJJ black belt, and he's also got terrible cardio, but he's a big boy, and he's a BJJ black belt. And that in itself was enough for Herbert Burns, who missed weight and then proceeded to absolutely quit on himself as a -300 favorite. Then you go fast forward to a fight with Alex Munoz, which he pulled out of. Then they rebooked him against Billy Quarantillo, which he pulled out of. Then they gave him Bill Algeo. Bill Algeo took the fight on short notice. Bill Algeo does nothing more than wait for this gas bag to gas out and then puts it on him. Officially, by Tapologies, they listed it as exhaustion from damage. Exhaustion from damage. Not damage is just physically taking you out, as incapacitated you, is that you're so tired from taking the damage that you just can no longer fight. Should be TKO due to retirement because you quit. But they listed as exhaustion due to damage. It's a bad look. Then he gets Julio Arce. Julio Arce is a career 135-pound fighter. His best work at 135. He's moving up for the first time in his career to 145, and he's not known to be a power puncher. He's mostly a volume guy. Slick southpaw, former Golden Gloves champ back in the day out in New Jersey, moves well, East Coast guy. Making his debut at 145, not really known as the most potent power puncher. And even he you survive the first round, get out of the spots, go to the second. Herbert's absolute sitting duck. Yes, his brother's Gilbert Burns. But how many notable MMA siblings is it's like one's good, then one of them ain't no good at all? It happens all the time. You just need to accept it. Herbert's got an excellent BJJ black belt. If you want to go into his academy and do some no-gi jiu-jitsu, he's got some old-timey moves he'll catch you with. If somebody wants to dojo storm him, he's a legitimate MMA veteran that can hold his own. But in the fact of fighting legitimate fighters and ranked contenders and guys that are going places in the UFC format, he just does not got enough. There's no plan B. There's no plan C. There's no ability to lose around and come back. There's no ability to get tired and find that second wind. There's no ability to face any type of adversity. He's not good. It's shocking to me that the UFC is actually giving him another fight, but because it's Herbert's brother, or because it's Gilbert's brother, and they're nice guys, they are nice guys. I can't say he's a bad person. I can just say he's a bad fighter. So Jack Jenkins, as much as guys like me have just shit on Herbert Burns for the better part of 8.5 minutes, that causes you to bet Jack Jenkins to the sum of a minus 850. And what you're missing in that is Jack Jenkins is also not that good. As Paul mentioned, he did get submitted twice before previously in his career. His wins on the Contender Series, Emiliano Linares, not good. His debut win in the UFC, Don Shaughnessy, not good. And he got taken down by Don Shaughnessy, for the record. And then his fight with Jamal Emmers, he got taken down by Jamal Emmers. He got outstruck by Jamal Emmers. He's a 5-1 favorite. I got him loaded up. I'm believing the hype. And he barely squeaks by him. A lot of people cried robbery online. I was happy to get it, but it was not convincing. He got outstruck and he did get taken down. I like that he's got solid cardio. I like that he's got nasty leg kicks. I like him as a forward pressure fighter, but he's there to get taken down. And a guy that's a 3-minute type guy, he's either going to catch you in that first 3 minutes or Jenkins will take over. But in that first 3 minutes, there is that capability of he just swings a big one on you or he takes you down. Furthermore, anyways, he robs Jamal Emmers, and then he comes in as a favor over Chepe Mariscal. Wins the first round against Mariscal. Looked okay. Second round, Chepe shoots the takedown. He posts on his arm, and it breaks. So he's been off a year. He's coming off a broken arm. The fact that he tried to post on it, his takedown defense is really not adequate to a level. And Herbert Burns is a coach at Killcliff. His brother's Gilbert. His brother actually wasn't great and got better later in his career. So it's not crazy to think that Herbert will give him absolute hell for 3.5 minutes. So live bet Jenkins. Let Jenkins lose the first couple of minutes. Hell, let Jenkins lose the first round. And then the line will be a lot better. And if the second round just simply starts, it's Jenkins all day. But you'll be puckered up. If you bet Jenkins at minus 850, you'll be puckered up.
First round could get
for the first round. Second thing, as Paul mentioned, is like attack it from the under 1.5 because Gilbert's not getting to that under 1.5. But the price is not good on the under 1.5. And I hate under 1.5s, especially if they're not good prices. Don't go there. So now you go Jenkins inside the distance, which is also not a good price tag. Jenkins submitting him is not going to happen. So you'd have to go Jenkins TKO, but it's not a great price tag. And Jenkins is coming off a year-long layoff, a broken arm, and there's a little bit of hesitancy there, I suppose. Like maybe you don't want to engage this guy and throw a 5-punch combination at the risk that maybe he shoots under and takes you down. So he might not come out there with the hottest start. But yeah, the bottom line is the guy's broken a bunch of people's legs on the regional scene with these nasty low kicks. He's got some decent technical Boxing. Herbert Burns, isn't the type of guy that's going to fight multiple good rounds. So really mind your P's and Q's, get out of the first and take over from there. But you are not wrong by saying that the price is blown out of proportion at this point. Even a bad fighter will have his day. And Herbert's got enough legitimate skills that he could be that bad fighter. But I'm not betting him, so I will take Jenkins.
Yeah, that's the thing with it is like with that total, it's like Jenkins hasn't exactly been a potent finisher, at least like not an early finisher by any stretch of the imagination. So it's very, very live on the table. It's like round one, he just kind of, lands the strikes safely, stays out of harm's way, and then starts putting the pace on him as the fight goes along. So at a straight pick him on the over under 1.5. It's like I don't love it by any stretch of the imagination. While you were talking, I did look up. I couldn't find anybody like on the current roster that but I would be interested to see if you would bet against Herbert Burns. But I thought about it back in the day, and I was just like, you know what? You never bet on a Mokhtarian. And Suman Mokhtarian was a featherweight, 0-2 in the UFC.
Was Paul. You could tell me Cody McKenzie fought in the UFC too. It's like, what about right now?
Back in April, somebody went to their gym and tried to shoot Suman Mokhtarian.
I can believe it. I don't know what
somebody dressed up as this is the research I was doing. Someone went there dressed as a delivery driver and tried to kill him. But they were unsuccessful. But yeah, he hasn't fought since 2019.
These are Tapology's rankings. Obviously, he's not taking anybody in the top 10. So forget about Topuria, Yair, Evloev, Arnold Allen, Josh Emmett, Sterling, Ortega, Volkanovski, Diego Lopez, Giga Chikadze. We're going to forget all about those guys, obviously. Lerone Murphy kills him. Calvin Kattar kills him. Ige kills him. Bryce Mitchell kills him. Joannison Brito kills him. Edson Barbosa. Has Edson Barbosa ever been submitted in the first 3.5 minutes? Because if he doesn't, he gonna kill him. Sodiq Youssef. That one's an interesting one. Sodiq is not very good. But if he just doesn't get chin Nate Landwehr style in the first opening couple minutes, like Sodiq probably beats him. Shad Woodson beats him. Bruce Leroy, Nathaniel Wood, Nate Landwehr, run that shit back, see what happens. Damon Jackson would just probably get tossed around the first 3.5 minutes, and then when that ended, he would take over and smoke him.
Jekka Sergey
smokes him
versus Herbert Burns.
Okay, let me just straight pick. Okay, Zalal kills him. Billy kills him. Naimov kills him.
You're way too far up the list.
Kyle Nelson beats Herbert Burns. I don't care what anybody
says. I saw Chris Wade is listed as 81 on Tapology's rankings, and Herbert Burns is 77. If Chris Wade and Herbert Burns were to fight in the PFL, I'd back Chris Wade all day.
All day, dude.
Yeah, you'd got like might get controlled. It could be rough in round one, but like Chris Wade would 100% absolutely just throttle and probably get like a third round finish because he's not the best finisher, but
I'm gonna find somebody.
He definitely put a pace on him.
42 Darren Elkins. Give me some Darren Elkins. I don't
you're way too down the list. You're not backing anybody there. Jekka Sergey versus Herbert Burns. That is the question. Who would you put money on?
Herbert Burns or Jekka Sergey?
Yeah, that's all sorts of filth. I feel horrible about all sides there. But
what number was Jekka? Where do you got him? He's number 84. He's number 84, and he is an absolute trash bag. You know what? 100%.
Herbert Burns by sub would 100% be the play.
But answer me one question.
Weston Wilson got a sub against Jekka Sergey last time out as a massive underdog.
You're a smart guy. You understand the fact that you were able to point to Jekka Sergey as a winnable fight for Herbert Burns. You're absolutely right. I'm wrong. Winnable fight. However, what would you line that fight at? What would Herbert Burns in a fight with Jekka Sergey?
He'd probably be the favorite. I think be like -1.
No, you think Jekka would be?
No, Herbert would be the favorite.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, no, of course Herbert is. So at that point, if I can get like -375 Jekka, I'm just gonna take it, dog. That Herbert maybe doesn't submit him in the first 3 minutes, and then he gasses out, and then Jekka smacks him up lopside the head. So again, it all comes down to price in this game sometimes.
100%. All right, speaking about coming down to price, we got Tom Nolan, biggest favorite on the card, taking on Alex Reyes. Tom Nolan's a -1150 favorite. Reyes can be had for +750. Reyes, it was so strange when he kind of reappeared because the guy's 37 years old. And you're like, was this guy just kind of like hanging out on the, I know he's like Dominic Reyes' brother, correct? But like, was he just like hanging out on the roster, like collecting like perks from like using like their healthcare? I don't know, because like 2017 to 2023, zero action whatsoever. The guy's fought twice in the last in the last almost 7 years now. He's been knocked out in the first round both times. Now they put him against a 24-year-old who's going to have considerable amount of size on him, and a guy who, gets the job done very, very, very early in pretty much all of his fights. Maybe a little bit chinny, but I mean, Reyes has some knockouts, but those were like 10 years ago at this point. Like, it's been a long time.
Against bad guys.
Against bad guys a long time ago. It's like, this fight makes absolutely no sense except for the fact that, like, they're doing like an old school Bellator play here, which is like, let's get a young, regional fighter who definitely has holes, has kinks to work out, but we see being good in like 2 or 3 years. Let's get him a win against somebody that we plan on releasing because Contender Series is running, and 100%, Alex Reyes will be released after Tom Nolan runs through him. But like all of the props, everything about it from my perspective as like, trying to use some like math and everything like that, everything is 100% blown out of proportion on this number, but definitely don't have the cojones to pull the trigger on Alex Reyes because I think he's way over the hill, and I don't even know if he was that good in the first place. So I guess Nolan is the pick, but at a minus 1150, and like all of the it's minus 300 to the under 1.5 in this fight, Cody. I think it ends in round 1 and Nolan gets a first round finish, but like even those numbers are so juiced that it's like it's really hard to argue that there's like any sort of meat on the bone here. What's your take here?
Yeah, it's a weird one. So on one hand, it's like the UFC clearly likes this kid because they're doing everything in their power to build him up. Like, he got a debut that was supposed to be easy. He's a minus 350 favorite in his debut over Nicolas Mota, and he got boxed up, punched out in less than 3 minutes. So a minute and 3 seconds. Boom, cross, hits him, dropped. So keep in mind that Nicolas Mota was coming off a bizarre no contest over Trey Ogden in which he got absolutely owned in. And then before that, he got knocked out in a minute 13 against Manuel Torres, who smashed him up with the elbow. Hell, my boy Paul Shaughnessy cashed big on Jim Miller, dropping him, taking his back, and choking him out with a rear naked choke. So like, Mata was on a bad run. That's why Nolan was a big favorite. But they gave him a winnable fight in his debut, and he didn't do good. He got knocked out. So there's a bit of history here. Then second fight in the UFC, they're like, how can we just dig the bottom? I'm talking go to Tapology and find the 87th ranked guy in the division bad to get Victor Martinez. Victor's not good. Tom Nolan, coming off a devastating loss as a minus 350 favorite, is a minus 500 favorite over Victor Martinez. And he wins, and he looks good. Now you book him as a minus 1,300 favorite over a guy in Alex Reyes, who's fought once in the last 7 years on the roster, is not good, is never going to be good. It's just like a freebie fight. So again, on one hand, why are you giving him all these freebies? Is it that you like him? You think he's talented? You want to build him back up from that loss? Which would be cool. On the other hand, it's like I see stuff happen with girls like Casey O'Neill similar to this. Your first 3 or 4 fights, you're not good, but they give you weak opposition. And then all of a sudden you're 4 fights in, your first contract's expired. It comes time for a contract renewal, and all of a sudden you're not fighting the number 25th person in the division. It's a top 15 person or top 10 person, and they look largely out of place, and their confidence gets shook, and they go on a losing streak. You see it time and time again. Tom Nolan's no different, and this is not a one-off instance. He was undefeated before he fought Mata, and he got knocked out in a minute and 3. Fair. He was actually once beaten as an amateur, right? Went 6-1 as an amateur. Only guy that beat him, Eric McConnell, knocked him out. So you watch some of these fights that he's won. He's been grazed. He's been hurt. He's been wobbled. He's 6'3". He's a giant for the division. But as such, same thing as his boy Sam Patterson, he stands upwards. When you that tall, you have advantages, and the disadvantage being that your reflex time in the pocket's a little bit off. You stand straight up. Your chin's way up. These overhand shots are going to land. And he got himself knocked out. So he's going to win this fight all day long, but he's a minus 1,300 favorite. So now you have to consider, well, how does he lose? Puncher's chance. And it's not that Reyes is a good puncher. It's that Nolan might not have a great chin on him. So to bet him at this price tag is a little ludicrous to me. Under 1.5, yeah, this is a fight that it makes sense in. But again, everyone knows it and it's juiced. Nolan inside the distance, yeah, again, like it. The difference between Sam Patterson and Tom Nolan, though, is that Patterson is a BJJ black belt with nasty ground game. Nolan does not have that. He's a striker. And if he can't take a punch, strike will only get you so far. So kudos to the UFC matchmaking team. They've given him a guy worse than Victor Martinez, if you can believe that. And he should win. But he's going to come out and try and knock out Reyes. And Reyes is going to just go out there and flail and try to land something. And so in that regard, it probably is a little more dangerous than you knew your guy would just get a takedown, set up shop on top and finish him from there. At least they're going to exchange a bit. But all the same, how could you get behind Alex Reyes? And Alex Reyes that had beaten some okay guys in California like Darren Smith Jr., longtime veteran. He beat Joshua Alvarez, Victor Meza. Nobody that's watching this program knows anybody of those guys. They're mid-range California regional scene talent. Not bad guys. None of those guys are bad. None of those guys are UFC quality, or at least what used to be UFC quality. So him to make his debut against Mike Perry and get smoked out by a 2017 version of Mike Perry in a minute 17, problematic. They book him against Nasrat Haqparast. He pulls out due to an injury. He took 5 full years off. They booked him against Trevor Peek. He pulled out of that fight due to an injury. And then finally, after all this long wait, he draws Charlie Campbell in his official debut. And Charlie Campbell took the fight on a week's notice, replacing Natan Levy. And Charlie Campbell absolutely obliterated him in 3.5 minutes. If his brother is not Dominic Reyes, I doubt he's in this fight. And if Herbert Burns' brother wasn't Gilbert, I doubt he'd be in that fight too. So I see what the UFC's doing. They're trying to fluff the A side by giving them a notable, good name, very winnable fight. B side. Problem is that people aren't stupid these days, and so the lines are just blown way out of proportion, man.
Yep. So Nolan's the pick, but
Nolan's the pick. Nolan inside the distance for a minus 1,300. It's like this guy's on the top ticket all day, but is not adding any value, and there is some type of inverted risk here. So he probably ends up on a second ticket, but the second ticket might have 3 guys on it this week for no other reason than this guy is not actually adding anything. His name is just there. There's no substance to it. And so parlay people will tell you just don't put him on the card at all. But again, we're doing full card parlays. We're doing full card predictions. We got to pick somebody. I've not met anybody. I have not met anybody that could look you in the straight eyes and tell you that they're picking Alex Reyes. But at some point, you will run into people who are just betting, spamming these giant underdogs for no other reason than they're giant underdogs and banana peel pricing. What happens if he gets himself disqualified? Like, think about it, man. This is a Tom Nolan who's got 2 fights in the UFC and he's 6'3". So who's to say you don't drop Reyes? He shoots a desperation takedown, you knee him in the head, or you poke him in the eye and he can't continue, or you smash him in the back of the head with an elbow and they all of a sudden he cowards like Cody Brunridge and they disqualify the other guy. Like there's scenarios that have happened and that can happen that you're exposing yourself to when you're just betting a giant favorite like this. So I will say, if it was boxing, he'd be a minus 5,000 favorite, a minus 10,000 favorite, because boxing's way off. But this, it's MMA. There's more ways to win. There's smaller gloves. Expect the unexpected, I suppose. But Tom Nolan should win. He just beat Victor. You can at least put away the he's chinny stuff a little bit further in your mind. But it's still there. You still think about it from time to time.
Has anyone shot a takedown against Tom Nolan? Doesn't look like it.
His grappling is not even that good, but yeah, his takedown defense would be good enough to stuff Reyes. And if Reyes is going to come in with his new game plan of holding him down for 3 rounds, like to me, it's not how he
like
fights.
34 to 1 at one of my books, which is like, do not touch it. But I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, Jason Guida, that was Clay Guida's brother. You look at Herbert Burns. You look at I was just thinking of somebody colossally bad. Oh, he had a blood infection, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But remember, Jake Ellenberger had a brother, Joe Ellenberger. Like, there's a history of these bad siblings, man. Reyes, unfortunately, has got his name etched on the bad side.
100%. All right, let's. We got 2 more fights here. We got Song Kenan taking on Ricky Glenn. Song Kenan, a minus 180 favorite. Ricky Glenn can be had for plus 155. Who you got?
Yeah, again, this one's got a lot of red flags to me. Don't know how much confidence you could have in it, but I go with Song Kenan. So Song's not great. By no stretch is he a great fighter, but he's a willing participant, right? And he had a slow start to his UFC career, but you can see that ever so slightly he's adding in some okay pieces. Got some power, whatever. He's got a couple decent knockouts. I go back to his fight with, say, Ian Gary. Let's say it's Ian Gary. Till that point, he's 4-2 in the UFC. So 6 fights, winning record, right? Not terrible, but just I'm not seeing enough out of him. In the Gary fight, he does land a knockdown and he lands 2 takedowns. So whether you're a big Gary fan or not, that was a step up in competition, and he happened to land a knockdown and 2 takedowns. He's someone that likes to come forward, similar to Jingliang Li. He's a poor man's version, but he's willing to mix it up with you. His durability's not bad, not as good as the Leech, but not bad. And his cardio is not terrible. He's very limited. This is a limited fighter, but at least he's willing to go out there, push a type of pace, and engage with you. So he loses the Machado fight, but the knockdown and the 2 takedowns, that held up well. Then he gets Rolando Bedoya. So Bedoya's not good, but Bedoya throws a ton of volume. He's one of these guys that's just constantly throwing in your face. He throws up big volume. And again, he gets hit 112 significant times. But he has good punch selection in that fight. He's getting outworked, but his eyes are deadlock centered at all times. He ends up getting a knockdown over Bedoya. And even though he gets outworked, his 75 significant strikes landed were the better punches, were the more appealing punches, the heavier punches. So he gets a win. So I got a guy that can strike a little bit. He can fight for 15 minutes. It's just when you match him up against Kevin Jousset and Ian Gary and Max Griffin and Alex Morono, which one of those guys is bad, Paul? Those guys are all good. He's not going to beat those guys. He's a gatekeeper to guys that are on the Contender Series, guys that got some tenure and haven't been able to get over the hump as well, but serviceable all the same. So he got hit 112 times against Jousset, went the distance. He got hit 134 significant times against Jousset, 112 against Bedoya, and Gary took him out in the 3rd round, but had landed 127 to take him out. So the guy's got questionable punching resistance, questionable striking defense, I should say. But you got to hit him a lot to put him out, if put him out at all. And to me, that's where I just don't see Ricky Glenn having that same level of success. I'm a big Ricky Glenn fan, but this is the harsh realities of being a professional fighter. Ricky Glenn likes to fight. It's in his blood. He probably grows up fighting. He probably fights a little bit in high school. He discovers a mixed martial arts gym. He's on board. To this present day, he has 32 professional fights. The early portion of his career, he's fighting 6 times a year. The guy loves to fight. The highlight of his career comes when he captures the World Series of Fighting, 145-pound title, wins. At that point, they weren't giving you $1 million, let me tell you. But a nice little win over Georgi Karhanyan with a guillotine choke. He's a Rufus Sport guy. Big moment for him. Cut from the UFC, whatever. Doesn't matter. The thing is that he's vocal at that point. He's living in Wisconsin, and he is working at a Costco. And he's very vocal about, I got no money. I like to fight. Fighting's my passion, but doesn't really pay the bills. So he balances these jobs out. And he loves to fight, so he shows up, and he continues to fight. But fighting doesn't love him back. Doesn't pay his bills. And beyond that, his body gets wrecked. Again, 32 professional fights. Been fighting for damn near 2 decades. Has mixed it up with all of the best guys that were ever put in front of him. And largely gives a good account of himself. But his body's straight up wrecked. So he more or less retires. Doesn't announce official retirement, but he retires. Decides, you know what? I can't afford to stay in Wisconsin training at Rufus Sport, so I need to move back. And he's from Iowa, so he moves back to Iowa, and he becomes a licensed tradesman, plumber. Excellent job. And he does the plumber thing, but he's miserable. He's miserable because he's a fighter. And what he wants to do is fight, and that's his passion. And essentially, he's an addict. And that thrill of hearing your name and feeling the adrenaline course through your veins and competing is a huge thing. They're very competitive people. That's what he's chasing. So being a plumber, even though it pays better and he's got a 401k, it doesn't make him happy. And what makes him happy is getting into a cage and fighting somebody. So he come back from a 4-year-long layoff between losing to Kevin Aguilar and winning against Joaquim Silva. It's 3.5 years. In that time, he was wrecked, dude. Back surgery, neck surgery, hip surgery. But he gets a little bit healthy and he goes to the local gym in Iowa and he feels himself. So he comes back in and he knocked out Joaquim Silva. That is what caused him to say, let's go on. Fights Grant Dawson, loses the first 2 rounds, puts a beating on Grant Dawson in the 3rd. 10-8s across the board, fights ruled a draw. It's like Ricky Glenn is back. But same issues that got him the last time are getting him now. His body is not keeping up with it. So he's had a bunch more injuries. He's had to pull out of a bunch of fights. When he does get to compete, he got Christos Giagos, winnable fight for him, but Giagos flatlines him in a 1.5 minutes, and then they book him against Drew Dober, which no shame in losing to Drew Dober, but knocked out 2.5 minutes into the first round. So his chin's questionable. His body is beaten up. He's older now. He's long in the tooth in his career, but he does it for no other reason than he doesn't care if he loses. He just loves to fight. And man to man, you can never say no to him. You can never take that away from him. It's his choice. He wants to do it. But don't expect these new versions of him. Don't expect these best versions of him. Last point is that you look at Ricky Glenn, as I mentioned, his career best. His career best is when he beats Georgi Karahanian, World Series of Fighting 10, 2014, that's 10 years ago, at 145 pounds. Eventually, his body couldn't make 145, so he decides to come to the UFC. Misses weight against Kevin Aguilar, coming in at 148.5. That's his last UFC fight. He misses weight by 2.5 pounds. And then after that, he took 3.5 years off. When he came back against Joaquim Silva, is at 155. Made 156. So he's not 45 anymore. He's now a lightweight. Fights Grant Dawson, 155. Fights Christos Giagos, knocked out at 155. Fights Drew Dober, knocked out at 155. Now he's taken another year off. He's coming into this fight with Song Kenan, and it's at 170 pounds. So he's essentially moved up 2 weight classes. He's not cutting any weight, probably because his body won't allow him to. And he's just fighting because he likes to do it. No one's going to fault him for that. It's a free trip to Australia to bang it out, maybe get paid. And yeah, he can win. It's MMA. And he's sunken on. Winnable fight. But nothing he's done has put him in the section that I got drawn up in my brain of people you would want to trust with your dollar and get behind. So in no way, shape, or form am I looking to back Ricky Glenn. Although I'm a fan. It'd be awesome to see him win because I know his personality, but I gotta go Song Kenan on this one, my dog.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of... I mean, the best Ricky Glenn I think that we saw, at least in the UFC, was the Gavin Tucker fight where he just absolutely...
What year was that?
I know, it was 7 years ago. It's like that guy, and that was at featherweight and everything like that. It
was a good fight, though.
Laid an absolute beat down on him. 142 significant strikes, got 4 takedowns, did whatever the hell he wanted with them.
They should have stopped it on 3 separate occasions. The ref was just massively incompetent.
Frankly, the last little bit, it's been, I mean, the durability, it has been leaving him, and now, going up to 170 pounds. Song Kenan got the knockdown against Gary, who just keeps kind of getting better every single fight, whether you hate him or not. Shows that he's got power in his hands. So, Song Kenan probably wins and probably wins by finish here. In terms of height and everything, in terms of, their, measurables, it looks pretty even. But it's, obviously the frame of Ricky Glenn has always been, pretty lean, particularly when he was at 145. I don't expect Ricky Glenn at this stage in his career to all of a sudden come in just looking absolutely shredded at 170. As you said, probably just cutting weight, collecting a paycheck, and probably his last fight in the promotion should he lose against Song Kenan. Song Kenan will also be the pick for me. And finally, the curtain jerker, we've got Stewart Nicoll taking on Jesus Aguilar, minus 240 for Stewart Nicoll, plus 200 for Aguilar. Watched a few of the Stewart Nicholl's fights on the Australian regional scene. He looks good.
Looks real good.
Looks really good, frankly. I love the way he's relentless, absolutely relentless in pursuit of the takedowns. He seems good enough on the feet, especially in this matchup against Jesus Aguilar, who outside of getting his first career knockout against your boy, Shannon Ross, who, I mean, that was about it. The hands have never really been his bread and butter by any stretch of the imagination. He doesn't really carry all that much power. I think Nicholl's striking looks good enough, but what this guy does is just backs you up to the cage, and he's got a series of different single, double leg takedowns, trips. His control from top position looks really good. He's got nasty elbows when he gets the takedowns. I mean, it is flyweight. Flyweight fights tend to be competitive. But Mateusz Mendonca was able to get 4 takedowns against Jesus Aguilar. And Aguilar snuck through with a very, very questionable split decision back in February there. Tyra was able to take him down and pretty much subbed him immediately. He's been taken down against pretty much everybody who's tried to take him down. This Nicoll kid, I think, is looks... If that, what I've saw on the regional scene, And like his last opponent was like a 5-0 Japanese fighter, like didn't look horrible, and he absolutely just like ran through that guy and finished him at the end of round 1. I mean, that looks very much on the table here. I think Nicoll by sub if you want to get extra greasy with it. I like what I see from this guy. It's 125 pound. Everyone has obviously some skills here, but I'm pretty impressed with what I saw like from the like 3 or 4 fights I watched from him. What's your take here?
Yeah, I'm going to agree. It's like when you watch the tape on him, he looks very good. He looks like he's got all the parts. He can wrestle, he can grapple, he's got good pace, he's
already 29, so it's like he's a finished product as well. It's like he's not necessarily exactly a prospect by any stretch of the imagination. This is his time if he's going to do anything in this sport.
Yeah, I'm going to say he's going to get a lot better, but he's going to get better from fighting better guys and that competition taking him to the next level because he'll accrue more experience. But as far as the Australian and New Zealand regional scene, like, that part of the world for him, as far as the regional scene is concerned, he's basically beaten everybody there was to beat. The tough part is like, how do these guys transition to the big show, right? On one hand, we talked about a guy like Tom Nolan, who awesome on the regional scene, has fought nobody, jumps to the UFC, big favorite, gets cold cocked by Nicholas Mota in his debut. Damn. On the other hand, I remember not too long ago, a little flyweight from Australia by the name of Steve Erceg, who had fought nobody, but he was the top-rated Australian flyweight. He debuted against David Dvorak on short notice as a plus 240 underdog. The rest is history. Erceg's a top contender, damn near won the title. So I am not saying I see the same thing. He fights like Erceg. I'm saying it's extremely possible that this guy at 29, same age as Erceg for the record, he's a little bit further in his development. He has fought in a good level of guys. He trains with very good guys. And what you do see on tape is, a lot of skill, a lot of good movement, a lot of athleticism, a lot of forward pressure. You don't know how good his chin is. Someone's going to have to crack him. But as you mentioned with Jesus Aguilar, this is the perfect guy. He's got one career knockout, and it's Shannon Ross. That's the only guy. He's never knocked out anybody else. When he fought on the Contender Series, it's like, he's one of these guys that's going to come forward, and he's Mexican, and he's got a great jaw, good punch resistance. All that is true, but he's got no volume. What he's waiting for you to do is tire so that you take an ill-advised shot from the outside, and he'll grab you with a guillotine choke. That's his move. His striking is super robotic. Not robotic, but just like that Georgian guy we saw in the Contender Series last night. It's just loopy, man. He throws loopy. Everything's wide. Someone that's going to punch linear, straight down the middle, jabs and 1-2s, stick to crosses, they're going to be able to just beat him to the punch. Aguilar's striking is just land 2 big shots and get in on the takedown, but his wrestling's not that good. But at least on the Contender Series, he got the guillotine choke against Tatsuya Taira, who buzzsawed him. Well, Taira's a top contender and one of the best prospects in the game. Him versus Shannon Ross. Shannon Ross is a bump. It's the Mendonca fight. The Mendonca fight, he got taken down 4 times. He got out of a couple submission attempts. He landed 19 significant strikes over the course of 15, which was one more than his opponent, but he got controlled the whole time. There's one thing about that fight, Paul, is that it's in Mexico City. And Jesus Aguilar, who happens to be from Mexico, gets the nod. He shouldn't have won. It was a bad fight. Bad fight that he should have lost, which was uneventful, and showcased that he has bad takedown defense, and he's able to get controlled. Tyrick takes him down, controls him, subs him. Mendonca can't get the sub, but takes him down, controls him. When I look at Stewart Nicoll can take him down and control him if he wants. If not, he's a better striker as well. Use your footwork, matador around this guy, land those bigger shots. Last but not least, if it does have to go to greasy decision, Aguilar might get some takedowns, but he's not doing much with it. If he doesn't grab his patented guillotine choke, there's not much more beyond that, and there's not a whole lot of ground and pound. So now you're subjective to live crowd in Australia. People are cheering for you. They're cheering for the guy that's trying to work, trying to land damage, trying to get back up to his feet. His whole style is just do more. And so, I think he's a legit prospect. I think the UFC did a good job of bringing in a guy like Aguilar that should allow him to shine. Whereas I do not see Aguilar getting knocked out. Submission prop, as you talked about, is certainly on the table.
It's like plus 400.
And so, yeah, plus 400 certainly on the table because Aguilar can get taken down and controlled, and the submission possibility is there. For Nicoll, it's like this is a huge moment. UFC debut. Didn't have to go through the Contender Series. I'm getting a fight with, friends and family being able to be attendants and teammates on the card and all this and that. First fight on the card, I'm going to shine out. And they're bringing in the type of opponent for me to shine out on. So I would take it over 1.5, but I wouldn't take it over 2.5. I would take the under on that one. So Yeah, good fight. I think the kid's a good prospect, but of course it's his time to prove that.
100%. All right, Cody. PRP. Hit him with it.
We pay a ton this week because there's a ton of value. There's giant favorites and then there's sneaky good underdogs. But yeah, we're going to go Dricus to Plessis. Steve Erceg, who I do like. Dan Hooker, sizable dog. He's going to be dog number 1. Add some value there. We're going to go with Rozenstruik. Jingliang, that's your PRP pick, but another giant plus 280 underdog, dog number 2. Valter Walker's dog number 3. Actually, that's 3, 4, and 2, 3, and 4. Sorry, because Dricus is technically an underdog. That one's wimpy to me. Screw it. That one's even money. So we got 3 underdogs. We're going to go with Ricardo Ramos, dog number 4, Luana Santos, Jack Jenkins, Tom Nolan, Kenan, and Stewart Nicoll. So there's value there if you can hit those plus sides. On the favorite side of things, yeah, it's a little bit different. So either chase some props, chase some overs, totals, all that, or just chase a couple of these underdogs that I truly do believe have legitimate chances of coming through. So this is a fun card. Honestly, I can't look at it and say there's one bad fight or one that I don't care about. This Nicoll kid looks good. Looks like he's a legit prospect. I want to see him. Rick Glenn, Kenan, they've paid their dues. I'm in on that all day. Tom Nolan versus Reyes, that'd be fun while it lasts. Jenkins versus Herbert Burns, that'd be fun while it lasts. Casey O'Neill versus Luana Santos. Honestly, I'm a homer. I like that fight. Culibao versus Ramos, that's a train wreck. Sometimes those are fun. Tafa versus Valter, that sucks, but still, they're heavyweights. You're saying you're not down to see a couple of heavyweights? One guy's on steroids, jacked up? Come on.
I love it.
Come on.
At no point during this program did I say this card is not good. I'm gonna watch the shit out of this card, Cody.
Yeah, I'm pumped up. Just the only thing that'll make it better is to hit some PRP picks. So
does it help that we're coming off of Tybura versus Spivak 2? Yes.
Armbar from
guard?
guard?
It does. Like, this is a lot more interesting.
Yeah, that one.
That's how they get you. That's how they get you. They put the bar so low that when they give you a good pay-per-view, you're like, yeah, here's my money. Take it. But yeah, no, it should be a fun night of fights. Props to all the Australians waking up in Perth, Western Australia, at the crack of dawn to drink and cheer for some violence. But that is it for us this week. Hope you enjoyed the show. For producer Jared and Cody Saftic, I'm Paul Shaughnessy saying goodbye and good luck.
Ow, ow, ow.